And yeah, guys, without any further holdup, let's just go ahead and bring him in. We got Mr. Killjoy Jake. How you doing, bud?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. It's been a heck of a week, and I'm sure it's been a pretty busy one for yourself as well.
A lot of horror news this week, man. I'm not complaining.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's been, the horror news is interesting because do you ever get the feeling, I know you hopped in on the stream last night for a minute. Do you ever get the feeling that sometimes it's like, man, maybe they just want us to, like, I mean, us, the fans, but also content creators, to keep their stuff afloat while they try to like really figure out what the hell they're doing. Like we get these tiny nugs that don't seem too meaty.
I totally feel that, especially with the with the new Crystal Lake news, which, like, we got a new showrunner and all that, but like still, what's going on with this series? I feel like we've been talking about this for years and we still don't have a clear picture as to, is Jason in here? Is it not, is it just a Pamela story? What's happening with this thing, man?
Yeah, it's going to be 2 years come October. And based on everything I read from the Bloody Disgusting article, it seems like they're scrapping everything other than the title and the fact it's going to be a prequel, because the new guy, Kane, they've given him, he's now the creator and writer. So to me, it's like they've bailed on everything. It's a total reset. So I'm sort of like, I'm like, we'll be lucky if we get something before 2026, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But I'm curious too, because I think there are so many great opportunities for them to knock this out of the park if they handle it the right way. And it'll be interesting to see, because A24 has certainly been successful with film, but how are they going to handle sort of becoming like the Blumhouse Junior, like the the production company that's like, let's buy something that's an existing IP. Let's see if we can sort of mold it in our fashion, but also present some of the elements that are still like tenets of that franchise. How are you feeling about it at this point?
It's definitely a weird studio to tackle Friday the 13th, but I'm kind of here for it at the same time. I'm excited to see like more of an artsy lens on this, just a pretty typical slasher franchise. I remember when they talked about doing a Pamela focused series, and I'm like, dude, I'm like totally into that as a Friday fan, but I think I just like the idea of, just going, we need a Jason thing, a Jason property right now, something with Jason on screen killing people. It's been 15 years since we've had it, I don't think the fans are going to be like super warm to something like that just right off the bat. It's almost like starting your Halloween trilogy with Halloween Ends opposed to Halloween 2018, right? It's like, give us the weirdest idea you have versus something a little more familiar.
Yeah, and sort of like what, JJ did with doing The Force Awakens. Like, here's something that's very reminiscent of what you already love, but I'm going to make sure that the details are different. So it feels like a warm blanket that you've had for years, but, you're in a whole new cabin. It's a totally different experience. And yeah, I think, like, do you think it's possible? I mean, it seems like maybe this is the direction they're going with Halloween, is sort of like, can't we do both sort of at the same time? Like, can't we give you the TV show, and after season 1 is done, like maybe we do a movie that's Jason, and who knows if they're part of the same universe, but like you get something fresh and new, and then you get something familiar, on the other side of it. Like, what do you think about something like that?
Dude, that's the problem, because I would love that. If, like, the announcement came kind of similar to what's going on with the Alien right now. We just got Romulus, now we're getting this Alien Earth series. To do something like that would rock. But, as we know, the film rights are just trapped in that fictional New Line vault somewhere, right?
Yeah.
God, I would love to get a new movie alongside a crazy, maybe more weird and experimental TV show. I'm so here for that, but I think bottom line, you need Jason killing people in a new Friday property before you try to tackle something just a little stranger like that.
Gotcha. So you want to see a Jason movie, or something Jason related before the Crystal Lake series, which probably is like just as likely as getting the Crystal Lake series in 2025 would be putting together a Jason movie at this point. I mean, when they did Halloween 2018, they might have announced it at the very end of like 2016. But to me, it seems like the news started coming out in 2017, and then boom, 2018, we have the movie. And of course, everyone has their issues with that, and it's one movie versus like the concept of a show and all that stuff. But still, it seems like once they hired the people that they trusted, they sort of hit the ground running. And I think honestly, like, I think what Halloween has above everyone else is Malik Akkad is there for the fans. You know, I was at H45, got to bump into him a few times. The guy is extremely friendly. Cody Snyder, who's one of our mods here in the chat, can attest to that because we both had a really fun experience with Malik at H45 while we were hanging out together. And to me, I'm like, that's the difference. Like, you can say what you want about the product and you can have your gripes about if the movie's worked or not, but he understands that the fans want the product and that he knows how to give it to them. And it's not just like, here's Michael in a Fortnite, you know, skin that you can put on your character. It's like, no, here, the movies are the most important thing. And then, yeah, we're going to do board games and like now we're doing video games and all that stuff. But the main thing is always the main thing. And the main thing are films, you know?
Right.
I feel like that's what Friday and Nightmare are really missing right now is somebody that's just like, I understand the fans and I have the rights. So I don't know I don't know which way is up here. Of course, I'm sure you might agree with this. Like, I would love it if they at least brought Vincent DeSanti into the room and had a conversation with him, because what he's been able to do, not just on the technical side of it and the artistic side, is he's been able to make fans really happy with Jason. And he's probably the most well-educated fan.
Dude, and you know, I really enjoyed Never Hike Alone. Like, the first one was really good, but the second one, like, I consider that part of the franchise. It's that good. I don't know, man. I was just blown away by that sequel. It is up there with some of the movies. Heck, I would even go so far as to say I like it better than some of the sequels. It's so well done. So they don't, frankly, if they don't get him involved with whatever the next movie project is, I just feel like they're missing out. At least a consultant, a producer, something, man. I mean, some kind of some role creatively in the next one.
Absolutely. Just, you know, be a consultant, be the guy that's like the intermediary, you know, and then you have a direct line to the fans, somebody that the fans already trust, you know. So if you brought on, maybe they just don't know. I don't know how they wouldn't know at this point with how many views those damn movies have, but maybe they're just so, like, you know, far removed from the world of us, you know. There's not a Malik out there that knows that there's someone in the fan space that's contributing so much, you know, for nothing.
Well, I think going back to what you just said, I think there are, like, Malik Akkad, someone who has the rights and is passionate about it, right? We have people that have the rights, and then we have people who are passionate about it, and I think we've already pretty much mentioned them. You know, we have Sean Cunningham, we have Victor Miller, and then we have Vincent DeSanti. You know what I mean? It's just like we have that guy who wants to push this franchise forward, wants to give us that official 13th movie, but it's so tied up in legal BS. I don't know when it's going to happen, man, but I really hope it does. I don't, like, at this point, I'll take the Blumhouse Friday the 13th. I just want something.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why a movie like In a Violent Nature did really well, because while it does have like a concept that's different, you know, a lot of that like third person floating camera, Resident Evil 4 kind of viewpoint sort of thing, which was revolutionary at the time, if no one knows. You know, I feel like, you know, Johnny in that movie is sort of like, you know, for all intents and purposes, like, we're sort of watching Jason, just like a little bit of a tilted perspective, you know, and it just goes to show, like, people want this, you know, a very simple idea, but people want it for sure. And I liked the 09 remake.
Yeah.
You know, everything, like, not everything totally works for me, but there's something about Marcus Nispel, man. What he did with TCM 03 and what he did with Friday 09, he brings this brutality. You can feel the force with his direction and the way he uses the camera. And honestly, maybe this is a hot take, I think it's the most interesting Jason's ever been. To me, he's like a spider and Camp Crystal Lake is his web. And it's like, if you trip that little tripwire, like, he's going to pop up out of a secret hatch, trapdoor tarantula spider Jason, and pull you on down. And I found that, like, refreshing.
Oh yeah, Derek Mears' take on the character is like so refreshing, so different, and just it's so unique to that one film, because we're typically used to him just being like a big hulking drone, you know, just kind of walking around taking people down, and it's kind of fun, right? You're almost kind of rooting for him. I'm scared of 2009 Jason, dude. Like, he's a scary MFer.
He's got that really cool, like, there's something about like that Victorian jacket that he's wearing. He's just got this different look. If I remember correctly, he uses like a different implement of destruction every time, which is really cool. They go back to the whole camp thing. So he's throwing hatchets, he's shooting arrows. Like, it's all sort of tied into the theme of like things that you would end up doing at a camp, you know? And
Right.
man, there's some epic shots. Him on the house with the big floodlight behind him, kind of like that reveal that to me is sort of like poetry with Richard Brooker's Jason in part 3 when after he shoots the 3D arrow and then turns to the house and looks. You know, it's got that kind of symmetry there. And I think it's one of the biggest shames in horror that we never got another Derek Mears. Like another Derek Mears Jason movie would have been incredible. I'm not saying the guy's too old right now. If he's up for it, bring it on back. But 15 years is a long time, you know?
Dude, yeah, man. And I don't know if you ever read some of the like script excerpts from what the sequel was going to be about. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Not as good as Davies. Dear God, you're coming for my voice here, man.
It's the battle of the radio voices, everybody.
I don't even have to put any
just listening to
syrup
this.
on it. Yeah, what did I say? Cream and jeans in the streams.
Absolutely, man. But yeah, I mean, it was gonna be like a snowy, like another 20-minute long opening to this 2009 movie on frozen Crystal Lake. Oh my God, I would have lost my mind over that, dude. So I hope maybe it happens one day. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed at this point. It's been 15 years, 15 long years. So maybe we'll finally get something, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I guess that's a good segue. Speaking of 15 years, is we do have that Rob Zombie 15th anniversary of his Halloween 2. And man, I'm one of those people that walking away from his remake, I didn't completely hate it. I thought it was sort of like ugly and dirty in a way that I don't really associate with Halloween. Maybe I associate it more with something like Texas Chainsaw. But at the same time, I just sort of felt like the remake was like unnecessary because I think the first movie is just so damn good at setting it all up that to try to retell the same story just seems like, you know, maybe the production company is just sort of, it's masturbation at that point. It's just like, well, let's just do it, you know? And then on his sequel, he was actually able to like, all right, Rob, go ahead and make the movie that you want to make. And for me, I heard for so long that it was garbage. When I actually sat down and watched it for the first time, I was like, that's one of the better Halloween movies I've seen, period. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, and you know, we're talking about the thousands, which is a big time for remakes and horror, and you know, not all of them are great. We pretty much just covered a lot of like the biggest, you know, the biggest talked about ones. If it's 2003 Texas Chainsaw or 2009 Friday, I think that the problem here is that it was just part of a trend. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we have to remake Halloween because all these other movies are getting remade. You know what I mean? Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, this, that, whatever. I think that's kind of the issue with it. Is like the first one is just a remake, but with Rob Zombie style, you know, tacked onto it. It almost feels right, but then you get to that second one, and it feels like Rob Zombie having the freedom to do what he wants, and not everything works about it. You know, I'll admit that, but I enjoy it kind of for the same reasons that I like Halloween 3. It is very much so its own thing, yet it's still a part of this slasher franchise for whatever reason. It feels almost more like psychological horror at times. It has that grittiness of the first one, but maybe even in a more effective light. I don't know. I love it. I like dark, depressed Michael Myers. Again, I think you have to watch it knowing it's a Rob Zombie movie, not a continuation to Halloween. If you can put yourself in that mindset, I think most people would enjoy it more. But that's a tough thing to do when you're asking someone to watch a continuation to Halloween still at the same time. But I enjoy it just as the standalone weirdo flick that it is.
Yeah, he is. You know, there's something interesting about Rob Zombie because clearly you can tell that the passion is there, and I think like visually his movies are beautiful. I think he's got like a lot of directors have like pulled from other great directors. I see a lot of Kubrick in what he does. Even in like Lords of Salem, all the symmetry and everything like that. And I think that he's got a great eye for it. You know, sort of like M. Night Shyamalan, who I mentioned earlier. Maybe somebody to help write some of the dialogue would be great, just to help you flesh out ideas. Somebody to bounce things off of, to be like, you know, Rob, maybe we don't say skull fuck the shit out of you, like maybe, you know, or something like that, or you know. By the way, William Forsythe's performance there is like amazing, but the dialogue leaves a little bit to be desired. But I think there is something. I've thought about this. I actually think that Rob Zombie's sequel sort of works as a follow-up to the original. Like if you just watch the original Halloween and then you jump into a sequel and sort of think of it as like the fever dream sequel, you know, of that one. It sort of works in this strange way. And admittedly, I know I mentioned this before, how I didn't like how grim the remake was. I know that the sequel's grim, but at least it's unique. And I applaud it for that.
I think I also care about the characters a little more, where I just didn't in the first Halloween. And I get that's the point, right? You know, all the characters are supposed to suck, but I like that it feels like, it almost feels like a little less edgy, but I feel like that's why it works in Halloween too.
Yeah.
I like a little bit of edginess, nothing wrong with that, but if that's all you're leaning on, which in my opinion, that's really all that first Halloween from him has to it. I think that's why I like 2 more. It's just a little more well-rounded. It's got more to it. I love like Brad Dourif's performance when he finds his daughter dead.
God.
Is just like, that's one of my favorite moments from his entire career, which I don't know if that's insane to say, but he's got a great career, you know. But man, I love that scene. I mean, it is him giving one of his best performances, man. And it's so emotional, it's so out there, and it's like, oh God, that sucks. I feel so bad for him. So to have that element where the first one didn't, I think really just propels that sequel forward, especially in my rankings.
Yeah, and I think you know, Scout is a great Laurie overall, but I think her performance in that movie just requires so much more. And I love seeing, one thing I talk about a lot here on the channel is I love seeing when artists like grow and challenge themselves and get better. It's something that I've seen from like actors like Melissa Barrera. We've seen it with like Robert Pattinson, where people just sort of like, they know that they've got that like passion and desire for the work, and you can see it in their subsequent films that they're like, they are getting better. And I think that Scout's performance in that sequel blows. She's given more to work with, granted, but it just blows the other performance out of the water. You know, she really becomes her own version of Laurie.
100%. And you know, nothing against the actress in the first movie at all, but I do just feel like she's trying to play Jamie Lee Curtis in the first one, where I feel like she does become her own character in part 2, and that's just the big difference. It's little idiosyncrasies like that. Even if it's stupid stuff like her talking to the teddy bear and stuff, like I feel like that makes it her own character. You might not like that, and that's totally fine. You might prefer Jamie Lee Curtis's version of the character, but I like that she was able to shine a little more. You know, from the opening scene where she's walking down the road or whatever, covered in blood, freaking out. She has a lot more moments to shine in that one. How do you feel about Michael talking? By the way, that's a weird one.
That is a weird one. Is that in both cuts, or is it just in the director's cut? I'm trying to remember, because I usually watch the director's cut.
I think it's just in the one cut, and I genuinely can't. It's probably the director's cut. I can't remember.
I think it's in the director's cut. I'm not a fan of it because all he says is die. It's just sort of like unnecessary. Like, it's like, we get it, dude. You're stabbing him while you say it. Like, you know, you don't need to say the word. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't ever need to hear Michael talk once he's an adult. Or at all. You know, I didn't mind when little kid Michael's talking. Like, that's just a little bit of a different thing. But I always thought of, like, when you talk about the shape, and I kind of go back to, I'm not saying that I'm a Halloween purist. I'm no Dave McRae, clearly. I mean, you know, you can tell. But I do love mood and atmosphere. But yeah, I think that the idea that Michael is supernatural, but we're not gonna talk about it, I like that. Like, I really like the mystery. And I know that, you know, you weren't the biggest fan of Longlegs, but one of the things that I liked about Longlegs that they did is that they sort of walked to the edge of trying to do the supernatural thing, and then they sort of left you hanging there. And I kind of like that. I want the mystique there, and especially with somebody like Michael. You know, with Jason, I kind of do want the lore to be reset. I want it to all make sense, why he's a little boy when he drowns, he's a little boy when he jumps out of the boat, but then the next time you see him, he's a grown-ass man wearing a bag over his head. Like, I would be interested in having that sort of like congruent and figured out, because Jason is more of a by the numbers kind of slasher, but Michael, I think, is a bit more ethereal. So I like the mystery. I think the most fascinating he has ever been to me, honestly, is 2018. I was on the edge of my seat. Every time he was on screen, I was like, what is he going to do? And I'm thinking what the motivation is. And I think that's the genius of Michael, is that, like, he makes the audience think. An audience that's thinking is going to be a smarter audience, a more critical audience, and it's going to make the creators make better art.
Yeah, man, very well said. I think Michael's a mystery that never needs an answer, and that's how you make him his scariest, you know? Like, anytime you try to pose something to explain that, which him talking, I would argue, is that, it shatters that mystique like glass. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's just you have to keep that consistent if you want this character who is very simple at his core to be something scarier or something more than just a man stabbing people.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think like what makes, it's the whole idea of that mask, right, was to create something that was unremarkable. They talk about it all the time. Like if you watch the documentary, they're like, we wanted something that was unremarkable, because something that has no distinct features is unsettling to our eye. It's uncanny valley before CG. It's just creating something that just doesn't look right. And then the fact, especially in the first film, and I think in the second film as well, the second film looks so much like the first film, even though the mask looks a little different on Dick Warlock's face. But every time you see the mask in a different lighting, it looks kind of different. It's like a thumbprint, it's like it never looks the same shot to shot, but it's the same mask. So I think there's also something sort of like Rorschach test about that mask. And I think, again, the David Gordon Green trilogy, say all you want about it, they got the mask right. Maybe for the first time since 1981. Although I do like the curse mask quite a bit.
Dude, and again, I will. I've made entire videos just crapping on Halloween Ends, not to completely diverge, but
you're fine.
love Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. Like, I mean, I have put them on like just as much as some of the other sequels now. I think they're some of my favorite sequels of the whole franchise, like easy top 5 movies.
Yeah. Honestly, the whole David Gordon Green trilogy, hope no one hates me in the chat here, they're all top 5 for me.
Hell yeah, dude.
They have, like, I really loved Ends, and I always have to qualify it. I hate that you have to qualify it, but I read an interview with David Gordon Green, and he had talked about, hey, there's this character, Corey Cunningham. He's going to be kind of like Michael's cohort. And it's so I went in knowing this is going to be something different. This is going to be some swinging for the fences every single pitch. So even if you strike out on 3 big swings, like you're trying to hit it over that big green monster, and I applaud them for taking chance, similar to why I love Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I feel like it's kind of the same thing with Ends, where it's like, I like that it's different. I have all of those other standard Halloween movies that I can go to, when I want something that's just by the numbers, I can go watch Halloween 4, which is essentially a soft reboot of the franchise. It takes the same beats. They it's kind of like The Force Awakens, where they change a couple details, but it feels very reminiscent. It's a similar song to what you've heard before. But it's great, but the mask, I don't know. But the idea that people, it's like, what would you rather have to watch in perpetuity? Halloween 5 or Halloween Ends? I dare you to pick. I dare you to pick Halloween 5 because, and this is just my opinion, it bores the hell out of me. By the time Loomis is saying, "Go home, Michael," I'm falling asleep. Like I am like, I don't even want the last 20 minutes. Like I'm done. So maybe that's just, kind of informs my opinion a little bit. Plus, I do think all the David Gordon Green trilogy movies look great. They sound great.
Oh yeah.
Halloween Ends arguably has the best soundtrack because not only does it have a great score, but it's like the first movie out of all 3. It stands out where they actually picked like a mixed tape soundtrack. And I think that is one of those really cool things about Ends. Another thing that sort of sets it apart, that it has like pop songs. The other movies don't have that, they don't like, there's a really cool kind of vibe going on there. I am curious because, you had talked about how you really, like 3 for standing out as well. It'll be interesting with Halloween Ends to see how people feel about it in 20 years, like to see how you and I feel about it in 20 years, let alone people that were born 5 years ago. That are going to grow up and they're not going to have any of the expectations or anything that you and I bring into it. And you and I come from different generations, but with this one, we're sort of together, both grown ass adults when we're sitting down watching Halloween Ends. So it'll be really cool to see how 25-year-olds, 26-year-olds will see this in 2050. Like, what are they going to think of Ends? And I think that's one of the most powerful, like interesting things about film as an art form is that you can always go back to it. You can always consider like the era that it was created in. And it seems like every generation of film gets a new chance, The Thing bombed in the box office, and now we talk about it as the greatest John Carpenter film of all time. So who knows?
Yeah, and I think you hit a lot of really good points about ends too that I think just makes it better than most of the Thorn trilogy, man. Like I'm not crazy about it, and I think a lot of it just comes down to like writing. I don't hate the idea of the transference of evil. I think that's actually really cool. What I do, and another thing I do really like about it is it's very competently made. The kills are amazing in that movie. The soundtrack I think is the best of the three, which might be a hot take. What is it, the Junkyard or like the Procedure? I can't remember what it's called now off the top of my head, but man, all those like the tracks towards the end of that flick I think are so well done. John Carpenter and Cody and what is it, Daniel Davies did a great job with the soundtrack in all three of those movies. So I really think there are so many elements of all three of those flicks that are going to age very well, where that they already have some kind of massive plus upon the Thorn trilogy, where 5 and 6, heck, I would even rope 4 into this, aren't made very well. I think 4 is very fun film. I agree with you. I do like 4. I think it's underrated. But 5 and Curse, I don't know. I think there was a time where I could get into Curse, but man, it makes no damn sense.
it is rough, and I do prefer the producer's cut for the most part, because one thing, like I grew up watching the original for so long. The producer's cut, I think I got it, on Blu-ray maybe like 10 years ago, something like that. But it was so rare. I'm just sitting in an FYP flipping through the cheap ass Blu-rays, and I'm like, what the hell? Producer's cut? Just sitting here?
Oh,
like this thing,
yeah.
like when I was a teenager, it was like that was like the, I grew up in this tiny ass town in Alaska. I didn't see Curse until it was out on VHS. It didn't hit my theater at all, Of course it's not going to hit there. But there was something about the producer's cut with Curse where you get, the soundtrack is a little bit more in line with the original feel. You get these longer tracking shots when Kara is on her college campus, and then when she comes home and walks around the house, that to me felt so reminiscent of the first film that it's enough to sort of bring me around on that. I do like the mask, and I think that George P. Wilbur does a better Michael in 6 than he did in 4. Yeah, I know that 4 gets so much love. Honestly, for me, it keeps on moving back. And that's just because I love I really enjoyed the David Gordon Green trilogy, despite its faults, because fuck, man, I mean, like, let's just be honest, like a lot of these movies have like glaring faults that we sort of let gloss over because of the nostalgia and just that we love the franchise. And there's nothing wrong with loving the franchise and still being critical of the things that are right in front of your face, right?
Yeah, and another thing that I'm very apologetic with when it comes to Halloween Ends is that you go back and watch that first one, and I love it. It's a classic. I mean, it's truly one of the best horror movies ever made. But you do go back and watch that, and you can tell it's a little older. It's got some cheesier moments to it. But what makes that film the classic that it is? What makes it so beloved by fans? It's the vibe. It's the atmosphere. I mean, it's unbeatable. It's unmatched. It's really the first like fall horror movie. You know what I mean? Like that's what makes it so special. I don't even care about the rest of everything else. I don't care about anything else going on. I can put that movie on at any time and just immediately be sucked into the world of that film and like the Halloween fall feeling that it captures so well, but maybe better than any film to this day. So I get why people like Ends, because it does have like the vibes down. You know what I mean? Again, the writing might not be crystal clear perfect, but you do manage to achieve that there, which I definitely have come around to certain aspects to it. It is probably still my least favorite of the new David Gordon Green trilogy, but I do have an appreciation for it, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think that's totally fair. Like, I get why people have a tough time with that movie, for sure. Like, I totally understand it. And I think that's another great thing about, like, fandom and talking about films is as long as we just sort of, like, understand, And I think, like, that's the most important thing is, like, be able to articulate that opinion because, again, a smarter audience is going to beget smarter art because we're not going to fall for the bullshit when they give us bullshit. Like, so even if... and that's a big thing I bring up with Ends is like, even if the story doesn't jive with you and you wish it were told differently, like that is a gorgeous looking and sounding film. And I do think the performances are really damn good. The actors don't get to decide what's on the page. Maybe Jamie Lee Curtis gets to decide a little bit because she's a producer, but they don't really get to sit down and write dialogue. And I think, I mean, arguably the dialogue's a little bit better, I think, in Ends than in Kills, but Kills, man, Michael is just fucking on one in Kills. And so all the Tommy repeating everything he says, it's like he's doing the Super Troopers repeater by himself in that movie. There's so many lines of dialogue where it's like, oh man, I just wish they would have given him a little bit of better direction there. And even though the whole Tivoli sidetrack and kills to me is like, again, kind of bringing back the Rob Zombie thing, like that's the ugliness that I don't want to see. But I do get what I think they're making kind of a profound point in Kills. And, you know, this is going to get like politically apolitical. I think one of the points in Kills is, hey, if you're part of a mob, probably not good. Regardless of like what the hell you're doing, this is what mobs do. Mobs cause chaos. Mobs, like it only turns into something really ugly and tragic. And it's not the way to do business, regardless of how you feel. And I thought that was actually something that was like, you know, man, we don't see like political points subtly made in films very often. A lot of times lately, at least, you know, and people use their buzzwords and all that stuff, but it does seem like there's some heavy handedness. And I do think that all of that stuff can belong in films as long as you do it subtly. And I do think that's what they achieve in Kills. Did you pick up on any of that, or am I just like grasping at straws here?
No, I think there was definitely some intent there, without a doubt. And I do. It's so funny to me, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to sidetrack at all, but it's so funny to me because I think someone, like pretty much every Halloween fan, either has some take of why they don't like Kills or why they don't like Ends. Like I've heard it across the board, and it's again, you know, we were talking earlier about, you know, we disagree on some things, but I think that's a wonderful thing, and why that is, you know, coming down to what that is. Some people find the dialogue in Kills to be annoying, and some people find the dialogue in Ends to be out of character. Like I don't mind the annoying dialogue in Kills because I like these strong points that are being made in the film. It actually it has something to say through a lot of its goofiness, right? Like I mean, some of the kills are so outlandish and ridiculous. The what is it? The car door slamming with the gun and the girl like, you know, shoots herself in the face. That's ridiculous. But yet you still have this profound, almost social commentary diving side story that's like, what? Like this is all the same movie? That's why I appreciate it for that reason, I guess. But I do at the same on the same coin, I guess, on the same side of that, I get why people aren't here for it, because it is all over the place. It's a very messy movie, but it's a mess that I can really dive myself into. I feel like that's how people feel about Ends, who really strongly love that one.
Yeah, and I think Kills, maybe it's supposed to be like, maybe that is the intent of the vibe of the film. It's the middle chapter. You know, traditionally middle chapters of a trilogy can not get a little messy, but like they usually are a little darker, right? You know, you're thinking about The Two Towers, Empire Strikes Back, like that kind of vibe of just like, you know, we're not going to be at a consensus by the end of this film. It's going to seem up in the air, and it might be a little bummer at the end. And I think that maybe that's what they're trying to do in Kills, is just sort of like, it's a swirl of emotion. And I do think like I warm more up to Kills every time I watch it. And I didn't dislike it to begin with. But every time I watch it, I'm like, man, the things it does well, oh, it really does those things well. Like it knocks those things out of the park. Michael, again, very interesting, like creating the art piece by stabbing all those knives in Duder's back, you know, like that scene right there is so tense and so like, you know, the people that say Michael is boring, like my good friend Cecil Laird from the Horror Show channel, he took me under his wing when I first started my channel. I love Dylan's New Nightmare and all that stuff. And he's like, Michael's the walking wall. And I'm like, yeah, but the walking wall is more interesting than like Freddy or Jason at this point. Like, you know, like at this point, like, I'm not saying he's got more character. He's not like flashy or anything, but that is one of those things, again, a character that doesn't have to speak, but when you watch him doing that, and of course, you know, the intention of not really having him in focus, and yeah, I don't know, there's something about the way they approach Michael in Kills that to me, like it almost, it reaches that kind of Rob Zombie level, but I feel like it fits more my tastes in Kills than a Rob Zombie Halloween film.
I think a lot of it is because they they do have something to say with the characters. It's not just the most like evil, awful people you've
Yeah.
ever seen in
Yeah.
a movie, like in most of the Rob Zombie stuff. But I really am fascinated with Michael. I do agree. They've explored so many different plot lines now where he's utilized in so many different ways. You know what I mean? He's this big hulking figure in Rob Zombie's movies. He's scary. He's mean. He's almost misunderstood at certain elements of those movies. Then we get to see him here where it's like he is like the Shape again, where it's just like he's this walking force that's just going to kill anything and everything in his way. He's just going to do whatever he wants, and it's not really with any rhyme or reason. He's just going to kill and he's going to go home, you know? And I really do love that about this franchise, that we've seen Michael interpreted in so many different ways by so many different creatives. We haven't seen that as much with Freddy or Jason. We've gotten sure, we have gotten a few different interpretations. I mean, Jason was a slug at one point, which, you know, we can't forget about that. Love it or hate it.
He was an Evil Dead slug. Dead.
He's in the Necronomicon, man.
They basically pitched that shit. They're like, and not only that, but Freddy's in this universe too. It's friggin' wild. Yeah.
Exactly. So I personally love that. I encourage sequels to these long-standing franchises because I really do think that there's so many different routes, even now still, you know, after 13 Halloween movies, I still feel like there's new directions you can take Michael Myers down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I do think like there's something about, and I'm glad you brought it up when you were talking about him being hulking. And guys, we'll wrap up the Halloween talk. Don't worry about it. No, I'm just joking. We're going to talk about Halloween till 5 a.m. No, there was something like, I remember watching the, you know, Rob Zombie's Halloween in the theater. And I'm sitting there thinking I had a similar feeling when I watched Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, although I love that movie a lot more. But I had a similar feeling. The way I feel about Fast Zombies and Michael being 6'8" and like 300 pounds is like, I'm not even scared of this thing because you might as well just surrender to it. Like, there's nothing to me. I do think, you know, I know that James Jude Courtney is bigger than Nick Castle. What Nick Castle is like your kind of standard 5'10", 5'11" guy. And James Jude Courtney's probably, I would imagine, like, what he was at Halloween, he was at age 45. I would say he's probably like 6'4" or something like that. But they when you put it on film, the way they shoot them, it is a good, like, you know, you don't really feel like there's a disconnect there. But I do think that one of the things that makes Michael scary is that it is a regular sized guy with supernatural strength that is not explained. And I think that's the thing that makes him scarier to me. Like, I don't need the brutality because Michael stalks the way real serial killers stalk, and he waits for his perfect opportunity. You know, he's like that cat that like wiggles its butt before it jumps on its toy. Like, he's hanging out behind the sheets, you know, he's hanging out behind the hedge, and he's just going to wait for the time that's the most opportune to do his thing. And I think, yeah, that's what makes him scary more than being, you know, brutal. But, you know, I do love Tyler Mane. You know, nothing against him or anything like that.
Yeah, Michael is slow and methodical, and he's just gonna kill. There's no reasoning with him, and that makes him scary. He's just a regular dude. I will say Nick Castle is shorter than I thought he was going to be. I saw him right after Scarefest, and I remember I'm like, oh, I'm going to meet, you know, Michael Myers is at the bar. This is gonna be awesome, and I'm like, he's like here on me, and I'm just like, well, what? You know, it's great. It's just shocking. It's Michael Myers.
He's older,
you know?
now. He's probably shrunk a little bit, right?
You're right. You're right.
How tall are you? Because I think he was 5'10" in the movie, so probably 5'11" in shoes. How tall are you?
People are never ready to see how I'm like 6'3". Like, people are never ready. Like, every time they meet me in person, they're like, I thought you were short, and I'm like, nah.
It's crazy, and it's probably just all about the way your camera's set up. Because I met Darren and Frank from the Slaughtered Lamb movie podcast. Have you watched those guys?
Oh no, I don't think I know that one.
So they were at H45, and Frank is like, you know, when you watch them, they do every video together. And I was like, oh, Darren's got to be the short guy. Frank's probably like 6'4". It was the complete opposite. Like, Darren's this, like, you know, 6'3". Well, I'm just like, oh my God, like, I'm looking up, you know, I'm 6 feet tall, and I'm sitting there going, oh shit, it is wild. It's wild. Yeah. And, you know, I think there is something to be said for Michael just sort of feeling like every time I watch the original Halloween, it feels like more and more real to me. And I think that's one of the magical things about that movie is a lot of other movies that I watch, I become not disenfranchised, but just like they lose their magic. But I swear every time I watch the original Halloween, I'm like, I'm more creeped out. And I feel the same way about another seminal slasher film called Black Christmas.
Oh,
Every
hell
time
yeah.
I watch it, I'm more creeped out. Like Billy to me is just like so effective and so awesome, and a great launch pad for everything we got after that.
I've been watching Black Christmas every December, like religiously for the last like 4 or 5 years, and I really think it's the best Christmas movie made so far. You know, Terrifier 3
Yeah.
might change that. You know, fingers
Yeah.
crossed. But man, Black Christmas it stood the test of time. I think it's one of the best horror. Honestly, it might be one of my favorite horror movies ever. I love it to death. It's another one that really restrains you from seeing a lot of what's going on. But when you do finally get more pieces of the puzzle, it just becomes even scarier. It's got a hint of humor to it. I love the characters. I don't know. It's so ahead of its time. It's a must watch for any slasher fan.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like it doesn't feel as old as it really is. And I think that's one of those really cool things when you look back, you think a movie's going to like show its age. You know, I've talked about Peeping Tom lately, where a lot of people talk about Peeping Tom, they name drop it, you know, they talk about it in Scream 4. So it's like people know that it exists. But when I first watched Peeping Tom for the first time, I was blown away at how good it was. Like, you know, to today's standards, how effective the film was. And I think Black Christmas, similarly, like I think it's really unsettling shit. Like my wife, I have to watch it like when she's out of the room or away doing something, because she can't handle the Billy phone calls, which are you couldn't even, if you put those phone calls in a movie now, people would freak out. You know, maybe they would be okay with it in something that's like Terrifier, that's not like a major production, like, you know, a major studio. But man, some of the stuff that Billy says on those phone calls is like, that's pretty gritty. That's some gritty shit right there.
I mean, you know, I love the Scream franchise. I love some of those phone calls. The best phone calls in horror are in Black Christmas, in my opinion.
Oh my God, yeah.
Those are terrifying. That voice work there is so unsettling. It sounds exactly what I think a deranged serial killer would sound like if he got onto the phone in the 1970s. It's terrifying. It's a strangely progressive film, which like I wasn't even ready for seeing that movie again. And I'm like, this is 1974, and we're dealing with like a heavy topics here. It's I don't know. It's so ahead of its time. It does not feel like it's from the early 70s. Yeah, hard to believe.
Yeah. Not at all. And again, like I think they handle the progressive, like the political, or not political, but just like the sociological issues like really well. You know, it's not just you know, the 2019 film, which, you know, to me is just like Black Christmas in name only. Like to me, that's like such a joke that I don't know how anyone could really take it seriously. It's sort of, you know, but in the original film, the way they approach that is like, no, Jess has like all of these reasons for feeling the way she feels. It's not just because, hey, she's a woman, so she just is this way, and like this is the way that like chicks are when they're in college. It's like, no, she's got like ambition and a life that she wants to live, and she doesn't know if like this is how she wants to be tied down. So it's like there's complexity to it that's really interesting. And when after you know how everything's going, like at the beginning of the movie, you see how conflicted she is. You have no idea why. She's sitting there just like, you can tell that she feels unease while the rest of her sisters feel fine. And then as the film goes on, and you know, when you rewatch it the second time, you're like, oh yeah, she's going through like some pretty serious stuff here. And yeah, it's just, man, the way that it ends, and I want to talk about It's Me, Billy really quick, but the way that Black Christmas ends is that, I mean, you assume that she's toast because the cops have just drugged her so she can get a good night's sleep. And the camera pans out. There's one police officer outside of the house, and you start hearing the phone ring. And what happens every time after the phone rings? Like, you know, Billy's still in the house. They don't know Billy's in the house. They never checked the friggin' attic. They don't even know that Claire's up there frozen. So that's an interesting way to like let the movie hang, you know, that your heroine's gonna die.
Oh yeah, it's such an upsetting ending, and I think because you have that social commentary in there, you're rooting for her more. You know, you want her to succeed, and you have that false triumph, like you think it's over, and then it's like, nope, he's still up there, man. I don't know, it's truly a brilliant slasher film, down to like its most minute details. I don't know. I love Black Christmas. I will watch it until the end of time. I have not seen the fan film, by the way.
So I will say this. I recommend checking it out.
I
I
need
think
to.
that, yeah, because so while they did hire an actor to play Billy, Dave does the voice.
Nice.
And, that's his forte. He's a voice actor by trade. That's his profession. And he does an incredible job. Like, to me, I can't tell the difference. The film looks gorgeous. I think with what they're doing with It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 is even better because they brought back like the whole crew and they have that experience. So it looks, I do think it looks a little bit better, but it really fits with what they already have done. And I think that like Dave and Bruce, they're just smart storytellers. They know it from our perspective. And then they also know how to put it on the page and make it make sense for everyone. And, Dave always talks about properly motivated mood and atmosphere. And if you have those things, like, I'm good. Like, go ahead and tell whatever story you want. If your story makes sense and it has like the vibe that I'm feeling, yeah, I highly recommend It's Me, Billy. Especially like if you enjoy Never Hike Alone, and have you seen Dylan's New Nightmare?
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah.
So I would say that it's right there with those. Like when I
Yeah.
think of Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street as like brothers. Like I think of Never Hike Alone, Dylan's New Nightmare, and It's Me, Billy as brothers as well. And I think it's great that they chose a property that, they're Canadian, so they chose a production that was made in Canada, but also that they chose something that was not downtrodden, but something that's like a little more risky, a little more niche for sure.
And that is really cool. I've been meaning to check it out. I've been reading all the Bloody Disgusting articles on It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. I'm very hyped to see it. I love Dave McRae, just from his channel and his performance as Freddy in Dylan's New Nightmare. Oh my God, he's terrific.
Yeah.
I got to see what this is all about for sure before part 2 comes out.
Yeah, and what's great is, you're going to go check out Terrifier 3 on October 11th. And when you get home from that experience, you can hop on over to YouTube and you can watch It's Me, Billy Chapter 2, because it comes out the same day, because that's the Canadian release of the original Black Christmas. So they're doing it on the 50th anniversary. So I thought it was sneaky for Damien Leone and his team to also pick that day as well. I don't know if they did that intentionally because they're fans of Black Christmas. I mean, I would imagine they're fans of Black Christmas, but I don't know if it was intentional. But I think this is a great time to kind of talk about Terrifier, because, we were talking about these horror icons from the past and, what it leads to in the future. And man, I got to say, like, you're a huge Terrifier fan. Everybody that knows you knows that. I think it's one of the great things one of the things I'm happy about that I found your channel is finding somebody that's like of a younger generation that has the same kind of excitement that I have about the things that I grew up with, and then seeing that, through your eyes with Terrifier, because, the first film for me felt like a proof of concept demo tape. Like, it's not, I don't think there's any story in the first film. There are things that happen, but I don't think there's any story. But Art the Clown is very charming. David Howard Thornton is amazing in the role. Like, he's, you're just mesmerized by him. The effects work is incredible, but to me, it's sort of like, it's like, let us show you what we can do with the effects, and then give us some more money so we can actually make a real movie. Which, when I watched Terrifier 2, I was like, man, this is what I wanted. And it, even though it was 2 hours, 20 minutes, it did not feel like it. I'm really looking forward to Terrifier 3. I think it could be the best in the trilogy. What do you think? Or best so far? I'm not going to cap it at a trilogy. Best so far.
We've already heard Damien talk about a part 4, man. So I think I do agree, though. I think part 3 could be the best. I'm hearing some amazing things I definitely can't say on a live stream. But I will say I do agree. When I saw Terrifier for the first time on Netflix when it came there, maybe like 2018. I remember I was like just out of high school, and I was just, I heard like about some new horror movie, whatever, and I saw this, and I mean, it never left me. I had my criticisms. What's up, Erica? How you doing? How you doing? What's up? I just remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, sure, there wasn't like a crazy amount of story or whatever, but that clown's an icon. Like, that guy's going places. And here we are now with Art the Clown being this huge horror icon. But, Davey, it's interesting. I grew up in the thousands where we had those remakes that we were talking about earlier. We didn't have a horror icon really that was fresh, that was like our own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, like Jeepers Creepers.
Jigsaw.
But, screw that
Jigsaw
movie.
a little bit.
Jigsaw, yeah, sure, but like not really. He's not like, I wanted the guy who's running around killing people. You know what I mean? I love the Saw franchise. God, I like, that's one of my favorite horror franchises, but for totally different reasons, right? It's very thought provoking. It has that like conflict of morality and all that going on with it, which I really love. I can talk about Saw all day. Don't get me started, but Art the Clown feels like my generation's horror icon. I don't know. I think I'm too old to say that, if I'm being real at this point, but I've really clinged to the character for that reason. And I'm seeing, I saw Terrifier 2 and it blew my mind. It was everything I wanted the first film to be. And maybe even more. I love Sienna Shaw. I think she's a great final girl as well. Yeah. Some great character work in that movie. And I do think that 3 is going to be an even bigger step up. We have like, what is it, 8 times the budget now of of Terrifier 2 going into this movie. And money's not everything, of course, but I do think, just from the teaser trailer we've gotten, where we've actually seen some real footage, opposed to the one that we got last November, we're seeing things from this movie that just make it look way more professional. It's still going to have that edge that Terrifier 2 has, those brutal kills, but I think the story elements, the acting, actors, set pieces are going to be an even bigger step up than what we've seen before.
Yeah. To me, the story elements in the sequel, I'm like, that's what we need. Like, we need an anchor. Like, you don't necessarily want the villain to be the anchor. And Art the Clown, like you said, is great. I mean, the look is iconic, and I do think that he is becoming that horror icon. I think those things take time, but clearly, I've been to conventions, I see people with all their Art the Clown gear on, like that's what's up right now. And I think having better characters, a true story in there, even I think Art has more personality in the sequel. Like, I enjoyed him more, especially for not really liking I'll probably never watch the first movie again, just because I know where the story really starts. But I do think that what's really cool about these films is it seems like we're getting, there's a progression of lore with Art the Clown that I'm really fascinated with, because there's that shot in the teaser of him doing the bloody snow angel and fading away, and I'm just like, I'm swimming in my thoughts, like, what are they gonna do with this guy? I know that maybe some things that you don't want to talk about, but it is really curious to be like, how supernatural are they going to make this character, and like, what's the next step? And is that going to be something that we're just going to see in every movie, where there's a little, almost like a breadcrumb, like a Hansel and Gretel kind of thing, where we're just getting a little bit more of what he's all about? And, and will every movie kind of reach a new climax and then we learn something new? I mean, in this movie, is it Victoria? Is that the character's name? Yeah, it looks like they're bringing her back. So how is she gonna kind of work into everything? What are you expecting from Terrifier 3, and where do you think they're gonna go after?
It's really tough to say, but what I'm theorizing right now is we are going to learn a big piece of the puzzle of what is going on here. Because right now, we just saw Art the Clown's head get chopped off and get birthed out of out of one of his previous victims. What's going on? This is clearly not a man. There's so much more to Art the Clown than what meets the eye. I really think we're going to get an answer, get a connection. We also know that somehow Sienna's father was involved with whatever Art the Clown's origin is. We know that's a part of it. We know that something is going on there. And I already feel like we know that the character's going to be in there. We got a set photo of Jason Patric, actor from The Lost Boys, who is sitting right in front of a bunch of drawings of horror characters. And if you remember, Jonathan was talking about how, their father liked to draw horror characters. I feel like we're getting some flashbacks in Terrifier 3 to when the father was alive. I don't know what that connection is, but I do believe whatever the answer is as to what is Art the Clown, how do we stop this evil motherfucker, it's with the dad. It's something to do with the father, and maybe these flashback character sequences, whatever. I don't know. I don't have the answers quite yet. I think this one is going to push some boundaries as well. I'm hearing things that it's going to be very, like, a little blasphemous, which I think everyone's obsessed with. The teaser trailer from this past November. We got to see a kid walk up on Art the Clown. What is he gonna do? What's Art the Clown gonna do in that situation? I don't know. Is he like Michael, where he sees a baby and walks the other way, or maybe not? I'm very fascinated on the former there, though. You know, what are they going to do to blast a certain religion? Which that's getting into some controversial territory, of course.
Yeah, and it does, and also at the same time, I'm just sort of like, well, that just seems like par for the course for something like Art the Clown. Like, I wouldn't even be, I grew up Catholic and all that stuff. Like, the way I feel about all that is, pretty fluid as you get older and you think about all these things. And like, I'm sort of like, I'm all for it. Like in the world of art, like I want all expression to be fully free, regardless of how I feel. And regardless of whether or not I like it or it speaks to me, it's like, I want it to be out there, because like the last thing I want to do is make people feel like they should like repress their artistic expression, because at some point they're going to come for you once you start censoring stuff. So I sort of feel like, let's just have it. Like let's go balls to the wall with what Art the Clown has. People that acted like that's enough, if he's going to kill a kid, I'm out, and it's like, oh, so you're fine with everything else. The first two movies were totally cool. Cutting off all sorts of body parts of people and like sawing somebody from their vajayjay to their jaws, like that's okay. But as soon as a kid's involved, you have to like get up and walk out of the door. To me, it just sort of seems like, come on, like, let them cook, let them do whatever they're gonna do.
I will also say, I don't think Terrifier, like in my opinion, I don't think it comes off with the intention to offend. It feels like a side effect of art's just nature. You know what I mean? Just what this thing is as a character. That's just what he naturally does. The story lends itself to things like that. I love that glass. Oh my God, that's so cool.
Yeah. That's my Michael Tiki.
That's dope. I don't know if you can see, but I have like Annabelle and the nun and a bunch of them right there. That's so dope. Wow, my brain just like train of thought off the rails.
It's another FYP thing or whatever, Sam Goody or whatever the heck those stores are called. I haven't been to a mall in years.
Oh, nice. Well, I love it though. It's very cool. Yeah, but I don't think Terrifier has the intention of offending. I think it's just kind of a side effect of what would Art the Clown do in this situation, and naturally that's just what comes from it. We especially in Terrifier 2, I think we see that we have this emotional story at its core with you have some fantastical Nightmare on Elm Street style elements to it, which make it really, really fun and very like throwback feeling. But I think that I don't know. I think a lot of people are thinking that Terrifier is just the edgelord franchise that's just here to offend. I think it's so much more than that. I think that's a very small element of what makes this franchise work, but there's so much more on top of that.
I think you're right. And I think after watching the first movie, I felt that way, where I was like, oh, this is just gross and dirty, and I'm not getting anything from this. And then when I watched the second film, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I think I see what they're doing here. And I do think that there's some like fun-loving quality going on with it, that it is this celebration of the absurd, and that's its own kind of art form, right? So like to try to compare Art the Clown to our traditional slashers or what we look for in traditional horror is not really what Damien Leone and his team are interested in creating. They want to create something that's wholly unique, And I think there's like a tongue-in-cheekness to it, sort of taking the piss out of it, sort of like professional wrestling it, it's like, yeah, you're gonna be so over the top, but like, guys, it's a fucking gag-filled horror movie. And maybe when you just see the images of art, you don't get it. Like you see the images on Twitter or wherever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I just don't know. Like, and then you watch the movie and you're like, oh, there is some sort of like gleeful joy. And it is a great example of like awesome practical effects and a whole team of people coming together and creating something that's like really interesting. The way that Tom Savini would talk about how every horror effect is like a magic trick. Man, the magic tricks that they pull off in the Terrifier series are pretty damn impressive. And I saw Jamie had said something about how, she's like, dang, I said I would never watch Terrifier 2 because I didn't like the first one. Now I feel left out. And Jamie, after watching the first movie, I was like, man, can I even watch 2 hours, 20 minutes of that? And I tell you what, Jamie, the 2 hours and 20 minutes of Terrifier 2 felt not as long as like the 80 minutes of the first film, because Terrifier 2 has heart and characters. And literally pouring salt on wounds, which is a lot of fun too in a different way. But yeah, and the soundtrack, man. I mean, the is it? Gosh, what's the guy's? Paul Wiley? Is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
Really great soundtrack, really haunting. A little bit of a Halloween vibe there in the melody, but he's sort of like he finds his own creative little minor key spin on it. And then, of course, in the sequel, you know, the Midnight, those tracks from the Midnight that feel like they're, you know, you hear it like 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times in the movie. It feels like part of the score. And I think that's another thing that like really brought it home for me with Terrifier 2, because I'm a huge music nut.
Oh yeah, dude, I just listen to horror scores sometimes when I'm editing here, and it just like it puts me in the vibe, you know. Just I love it so much. I have a lot of Paul Wiley's stuff from Terrifiers 1 and 2 just in that playlist. It's great music, man. Again,
really good.
We were talking about atmosphere with Halloween. I think that especially Terrifier 2 has a great atmosphere to it. Created a lot, like almost solely from the music that is just another thing that adds so much to it. Alongside Stream, I don't mean to, you know, diverge too much, but Stream just came
go for
out
it,
tonight.
Man. Yeah.
And Paul Wiley also does the score for that. Also very, very well done. So if you can get out to a screening of that, if it's near you or not, definitely check it out. If you like Terrifier 2, I think you'll dig this one.
Well, I live in Phoenix, so I would imagine that there's got to be a spot where I can check out Stream. And I've heard you talking quite a bit about it. Could you give us a little quick sort of Killjoy Jake, 30-second to a minute, like synopsis and review?
Well, Stream 2024 is about the Keenan family who drops on by one of their favorite hotels from the past, only to be attacked by 4 different killers playing a deadly game. It is so much fun. It has, like, name a B-movie horror actor from the 80s, they're in it. Like, I'm not even kidding. Jeffrey Combs. Why is that the only person I can think of? Tim Reed. Bill Moseley. There's a surprise guest in there. I think Barbara Crampton's in there. Felissa Rose. So many. I mean, the list goes on. It's the Expendables of horror, man. It's a blast from start to finish. Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton is one of the killers as well, which is great. Sweet. Yeah, it's a killer movie, man. If you can make it out to the theaters to see this one, I recommend it. One of my favorite kills in 2024 horror is in there as well, too.
Hell yeah. Well, and to me, it sort of looks like, just from what I've seen, is it like they decided to be like, well, let's do like a real kind of Friday night at Freddy, or 5 night. Why do I say Friday nights? Because I didn't grow up with it. 5 nights at Freddy's. I keep on doing that. Cecil's gonna watch this and be like, dude, Robert the Wolfman's like, Davey, you're a goddamn joke. But it seems like is it sort of like all these killers sort of converge on these people in one sort of like, not a tournament, but sort of like a arena or something like that?
It's kind of like a dark web game. They're like competing for kills. Like whoever, like, I could say this is in the trailer. It's almost like this dark web thing where people are like betting on which killer is going to get the most like kills. They like bet money for it. Like, okay. Again, not spoiling. I don't think I'm spoiling anything here, but there is like a scene towards the end of the movie where it's like the game is over and you see all these people like around the world who are like, they just won like $40,000 because they placed their bet was correct or whatever. It's a crazy movie. It feels very much so like if Terrifier 2, Cabin in the Woods, and I'm trying to think like what's another really good example of something else. It's got a goofy edge to it, which is really unexpected but fun. So it's got a little bit of humor to it. It's got a lot of different. The Shining. I think The Shining is another really good comparison piece. Definitely standing on the shoulders of giants a little bit with this one, but it feels like a lot of different big horror movies kind of melted down into one. A very like it's made by fans. You can tell. Like it's just made by fans of big horror movies. Has that vibe to it.
I love that because I think that like regardless of whether you say it or not, like every subsequent work is like an amalgamation of the things that you've collected in your head and the ideas. So everyone can walk out there and act like they have the most original idea. But really it's just about how you put an original spin on something that's relatively familiar, because your movie's probably not going to make money unless it's familiar, right. even something like Terrifier, like there is something that slasher fans can grab onto that they recognize, but then there's also, it's a different take on that. So I always talk about that like tilt of perspective. Like you know, you're looking at the same thing, you're just like looking at it this way instead. And yeah, I'm excited. I gotta check out Stream. You've been talking about it quite a bit. You went to check out the premiere a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, something like that.
I became friends with the director maybe like 2 years ago, Michael Levy. He's actually in the first Terrifier. He's Will the Exterminator, gets his head chopped off.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so I became friends with him a couple years ago, and he actually invited me to the New York premiere. It was awesome. I got to meet so many cool people. I got a picture with like Bill Moseley. It was sick. But dude, it was so much fun, and it really, like, I'm not just saying it because I was invited to the premiere. It actually was like a really good movie, and it clearly has some great people behind it as well. It was just like a big love fest, like, going there. Like, it was wonderful. It was just people like hugging, shaking hands, and saying like, I can't believe we finally did this. They filmed it through you know, that horrible virus we had a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I remember it was weird in 2020. You couldn't say that on YouTube, so I don't know if I can. Well, if I can now, but
here's the thing, Jake. No one cares about my channel, so you can say whatever you want here, because I've got no gravitas, no nothing. I'm not even at 1,000 subs, so YouTube doesn't even care. That's why I swear freely. But you could call it the vid if you want, whatever you feel comfortable with.
The vid. I like
the vid.
I like that. I like. There we go. Just to keep it safe. But yeah, no, I don't think. I have a lot of respect for these people. They made their film happen on, you know, a relatively lower budget. It had a lower budget than Terrifier 2. And on top of that, they got to pull so many cool actors and some big surprises as well. There's one of the big surprises kind of leaked online. I don't know if it leaked is the right word. We had Variety talking a little bit about it. Don't look it up. Like, just go see this movie and have the blast of, I can't believe this fucking guy is in this movie. This is awesome. But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I really did enjoy my time checking it out early. And if you can make it to the theater, do it. I'm talking to everybody here. So go check it out.
Yeah, and that's one of the crazy things about movies now is it's like it's like walking through a landmine field, you know, with trying to avoid spoilers. And I had mentioned it before we brought you into the stream about, you know, Deadpool and Wolverine, where I'm just like, at this point, because I tried to catch it on opening weekend, but there wasn't 2 seats together that weren't in the first 2 rows. And I'm not going to spend like $30 to have like a pain in the neck. Right. So,
right.
And then stuff is spoiled like the following Monday, Tuesday, where I'm just scrolling through YouTube, and people are spoiling it through their community posts. And I'm just like, well, sorry, dude, I've got to unsub because I don't like, I'm seeing images that it's like, why are you doing this? Like, and it's interesting because I know people do it for clicks and all that kind of stuff. I know we feel like we gravitate towards that. That sort of brings it back to a little bit about what we were talking about with Crystal Lake, where it's like, the content creators feel like they've got to put the content out there for clicks, and but at the same time you got to be like, stay true to yourself and talk about what you're passionate about and not feel like you're wasting people's time. You've brought that up about Scream 7 when people are like, hey, do you want to talk about Scream 7? I heard you talking about it even today, where you're like, I'm not going to talk till there's something real because I don't want to give you guys the bullshit. And that's something that I really respect about like the way you run things. But it is really tough to avoid those things. So, I mean, when Variety's putting it out already, it's like, are they just banking that the people that read Variety aren't going to go to see Stream or won't go to see it unless they read that something's going to happen in the movie that's going to bait them to go see it?
You know, it's a really weird situation, because I remember like I actually asked, I got to talk with Michael when we were at the premiere, and I was like, hey, can I like put out a video, you know, to talk about this? I want to bring some attention to it. And I'm also just thankful that they, you know, they invited me to this premiere. It was awesome. And I asked him that, and he's like, yeah, you can. He's like, you talk about the movie, whatever you want. Just don't spoil the cameo. And I, you know, this was before the movie. I didn't know what he was talking about. I'm like, oh, what cameo? And he whispered in my ear, and I'm just like, what? You know what I mean? I was like, no way. Like, that's the thing he was so like secretive of. He's like, don't say anything about it, man.
But did you tell him you just spoiled the cameo?
yeah. But like,
man.
But I also had no idea where it was coming in the movie, and then like when it hits you, you're just like, no way, like that's so cool. But I just like, it's weird because like they did announce it today, I think after the Variety article came out. So I don't know what the situation was. Maybe it's more pull to get people to come to the theater, because it's definitely a big deal.
That's what it seems like. right?
I don't want to say why, I don't want to say why, but it's a very, very big deal because this person has not been in a horror movie in a very long time. And this is kind of their return to physically being on screen. They've been doing voice roles for a long time. I'm just giving. I feel like I'm beating around the bush at this point. But
no, you're cool. You're cool.
I just thought it was so thought it was so dope, and to see that come out like before the first showing, which I think was like at 7:00 tonight or something, just kind of bummed me out. I'm just like, man, that was such a big surprise. I wish people could have gotten to experience that for the first time. So again, don't look it up. Just go to the theater to see this one, and just be blasted in the face with a performance from someone you likely know and love. So,
well, and I've kind of got like I've gotten to the point now in my life where. So if I watch a trailer or a teaser and it has me interested, I'm done. Like once the bait on once the bait on the hook is my taste, I'm done because I already want to see your movie. So when you put out your next trailer, the only thing I would be doing is trying to chase clicks to like talk about it, and which I've my channel's like 13 months old. I've certainly it's not like I'm thinking about it as far as chasing clicks. It's just like, well, let's cover like the news or whatever. And then I'm at the point now where I'm like, man, if the first trailer excites me, then I might as well just back off and just let the film speak for itself and let it stand on its own legs and not have anything ruined or spoiled beyond that. Because like, I love the first Joker trailer for Folie à Deux. And then I watched the second one and I'm like, well, this isn't bad, but it doesn't make me more excited. So it's kind of not good. I guess it's like that line from Tommy Boy where Brian Dennehy says like, in auto parts, you're either living or you're dying. There ain't no third direction. And I feel like that with like, being excited about a film project or a TV project or whatever. It's like, once you're excited, you might as well just like wait, because what if they don't raise your excitement level the next time? Or what if you find something out that you don't want to find out, or have a joke spoiled? Even the Beetlejuice trailer, which I think is the second trailer, which is a little different because it's comedy, it does give away more of the jokes. And so I was like, all right, I'm done. Because I'd rather just, back in the day when I was a kid, and maybe when you were really little too, but when I was a kid, you would see the trailers in the theater. Maybe during a football game, you'd see like a 15-second movie spot on the TV, but you wouldn't get a real trailer on the TV like in the 80s and 90s. They didn't do like full trailers. So the jokes that could get spoiled or the moments that could get spoiled, like you don't remember them. Like you see it in the theater and then you watch the movie 9 months later and you don't even remember anything about the trailer other than, oh, that's coming out. Cool. I want to see that. But now we can sit there and watch it on YouTube. People dissect it, slow motion breakdowns. And that's all well and good, for the folks that create that kind of content. But for me, I'm like, all right, once I'm excited, that's it. I'll just let it speak for itself.
Trailers are just different nowadays. Like they purposefully show you stuff to, get you to the theater. And I think that's what a lot of this stream marketing is. But I will say I actually did a whole video on this maybe like a couple of months ago. I talked a little bit about, don't give too many hints. I'll shut up. I promise I'll shut up. No, it's really worth your time. Like go see this movie. But, I did a video a little while ago talking about the 28 Days Later trailer, like from, all the way back from the early thousands. It doesn't spoil anything about that movie. I mean, not a thing, but it creates the vibe of what's so scary about that film without showing you too much. It shows you a few of those like long wide shots of him like over the bridge, and it's just so lonely, nothing's going on. There's all this trash all over the streets. But that's all it shows you. Like you couldn't even tell it's a zombie movie from the trailer. It's so well done, but there's a danger afoot because of the way that it's structured. That's what trailers need to do. They need to create the vibe. They don't need to tell you what's going to happen. Just create the atmosphere that you want to sink your audience into with the trailer. And you don't have to show us too much to do that. Like it's actually quite an easy feat to do. But not too many trailers do that nowadays. I totally agree. I wish we could go back to that to that approach. Yeah,
I maybe it's one of those things where it's like, everything's done in a boardroom now. Like the way they write movies for the most part now. And maybe, one of the reasons why people love things like Terrifier is because it's not done this way. But this whole like kind of safe approach, which ends up like not pleasing anyone. It's sort of like a bunch of people like in a boardroom. They're like, well, we have to have something really exciting, instead of thinking like, well, hey, this is actually like an IP that people have been loving for like 45 years. So maybe we just like tease them, like a little cock tease teaser would be perfect, you know? Just give them a little taste of what they're gonna get and leave it at that. But yeah, it is certainly a lost art for sure, and that's really refreshing to hear, especially from somebody, you know, in a younger generation, that you're sort of like, you know, you feel the same way. You're like, I don't need that. And I think that maybe one of the reasons why they put out trailers that give away too much is because they do feel like they need to meet the audience more than halfway. But I think the people that are into it and invested are willing to go halfway, maybe even more, especially horror fans. I don't know if horror fans get, gosh, maybe like, I want to know your thoughts on this, Jake. Do horror fans get enough credit from the people that are putting together the films as far as like the more establishment or, you know, those more recognizable IPs? Do they understand that like we kind of get it and we're the experts?
I think that the long legs marketing is a perfect testament to all of this. You know, this is a very confident marketing campaign. You can say whatever you want about the film, but that was the most confident marketing. Like it was like, this is going to be the scariest movie you've ever seen. Like, fuck you. That's what the marketing of that movie basically said. Yeah. And that's what I love about it. I think that too many movies market their movie and they're not directly saying this, but they're subconsciously telling you, please come and see our movie. And that's the problem. Like if you tease something as saying like, this is going to scare the crap out of you, which that's it. That's the vibe that the long legs marketing gave off. That's why that movie made $100 million. Is because it's like, what is going on with this marketing is so scary. This is awesome. I have my gripes with the film, but I love the first two acts. Like, I mean, the first two acts are some of my favorite things from 2024 horror. I'll bitch about the third act all I want, but man, those first two acts are chef's kiss. I love them to death. And they really did deliver, I think, on a lot of elements from that marketing. And again, I just can't stress it enough. That's how you market a movie, not what The Strangers Chapter 1 just did, where it's 1,000 different clips of, you know, celebrities saying, go see this movie, it's awesome. That's begging, you know what I mean? That's practically getting on your knees and kissing the audience's ass. That's not what you should do to hype up your movie. You should say what your marketing should say is, you're missing out if you don't come see this. And by doing that, you have to be a little confident. You have to be steadfast in your product, and it doesn't feel like many movies nowadays are.
Yeah, and like not a lot of movies are willing to just be like, let's do something that feels viral, that feels like old school, that feels, you know, not that Longlegs is anything like the Blair Witch Project, but the way that they market it, like it was pretty similar as far as like these little, you know, a trailer that's just one still picture and the camera just zooms in on the picture of this family, you know, and you see that family more in that trailer than you do in the entire film, but it builds that sort of that vibe and that mood. Are you a fan? Have you seen Scrooged with Bill Murray, the Christmas film directed by Richard Donner? You know, when he shows his version of the trailer for Scrooged and he's like, I want them to be so afraid that they can't miss it. You know, because the Bobcat Goldthwait is like, oh, the drugs and everything and the shotgun. And it's like, but that's kind of it's exactly what you just described right there, is a trailer that makes people feel afraid to miss it because there's something, a little worm has been put in their brain and they need to know what the answer is to this unsettling thing that they just saw.
Well, and let's just go back through the conversation we've had tonight, Davey. Like, I hate to be so, I hate to be like just over the top like this, but
let's peel it back.
What from what I just said about Stream is making people want to go see it? Like me saying, "Hey, go buy tickets," or me saying that there's a cameo from somebody in there that's, you know, someone that you all really like. There's a mystery to that. There's like, I'm gonna be missing out if I don't go see this now. That's the hook. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Yeah. I can tell you to buy a ticket all you want, but what's really gonna get people to go to the theater is that hook. So that's what a lot of marketing today doesn't understand. Like, I mean, Strangers Chapter 1, man, they put out a lot, sure, and they made a little bit of money, but Longlegs made $100 million because of their fucking awesome and confident marketing campaign.
Yeah, and Longlegs probably didn't cost very much. I mean, I think one of the cool things about, I mean, it looks like a other than paying Nicolas Cage, who I don't even, who knows? I haven't looked up what his pay cut is. I would imagine a guy like him. I mean, we're in the middle of a Cage-assance. Like the last 7 years, that's what I'm calling it, is a Cage-assance, because he went from being the guy that took every role to get himself out of debt to being the guy that takes whatever crazy roles he wants because he's in a spot where he can express himself creatively. And for somebody as recognizable as Nicolas Cage, both his face and his voice, in that movie, to really not make you really think that it's Nicolas Cage, to give you that suspension of disbelief, which I still think is one of the most important things, especially when you're talking about movie stars. I don't want to think about the movie star. I want to just watch the movie and be immersed. And Nicolas Cage's performance and the makeup in that film like brought something totally new. I left that movie not knowing if I ever needed to see it again, but thinking that him and Micah Monroe deserve award nominations for their performances.
I think it's Micah Monroe's best performance in a horror movie, the more I think about it. I also think that Nick Cage is he's so hilarious. He's hilarious in that role, I think. I loved it. I really did love those two. Anytime they were together, it was pure perfection. I don't know if I was crazy about the story. I don't know if I was crazy about the reveals, but the performances in Longlegs are top tier. Like some of the best from the year for sure.
Yeah, and like Osgood Perkins, it sort of reminds me of like Wes Anderson a little bit, the way he shoots a film. You know, sometimes the camera is just in this static spot and everything sort of moves around it. I think that's another one of those things that, like, to me felt immersive. Like, it's one of those things about, to take it back to It's Me, Billy, and what I'm seeing from It's Me, Billy Chapter 2 is the deliberation of like where you put the camera. The idea that you can tell that there's like thought behind that. And it's not like, well, we're just going to shoot this movie like we shoot every other movie. It's like, I love seeing those little, those fine points, those like nuanced things, like paid a little bit more attention to. And I think that's one of the things that can sort of separate films from one another. And I mean, Longlegs, it'll be interesting. I want to know how I feel after watching it a second time, because I woke up the next day thinking like, I need to watch that movie again now that I know how it all shakes out. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's interesting to see where the tastes lie, because, I really love Late Night with the Devil in March.
Yeah.
Again, another immersive film that a lot of people are like, it just wasn't scary. And I'm like, well, if you're an adult and you're getting scared by films, I'm sorry. If you're really legitimately getting scared, I'm sorry, because like maybe it makes you feel unsettled, but like when I tune into something like Late Night with the Devil, I want to feel, that unsettling feeling, and I want to feel sort of brought into that world. I'm not looking to be legitimately scared. And then I watched Abigail at a press screening, and the crowd was hooting and hollering, and I'm sitting there thinking like, man, this is like C+, like B-, like,
wow,
okay, yeah. And like, I don't know what it is with me, because I feel the same way about Scream 5 and Scream 6. I think they're at the bottom of the franchise. I think they're just like, okay, paint by numbers, like, how to make a movie and make it successful, but what are you giving me that I haven't seen before? And can you finish your story? Because I felt like Abigail, and man, every time I talk about Abigail in a video, I love it. I always get a comment where someone's like, it's okay that they revealed she was a vampire in the trailer. And it's funny because I always say that. I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. But the fact that the first kill doesn't come until like 35 minutes into the movie, once you know that, I'm not okay with that. Because if you're going to give me that in the trailer, then let's get going and let's tell the story. The characters are really charming in Abigail. There's a lot of awesome interactions. I just felt like, man, they're sort of wasting some time at the end. A lot of reveals at the end that sort of felt like, oh man, you're changing it again. And then something like Longlegs that I totally loved. And it seems like, it's like, it's just interesting to see, like, the things that we all love, the things that get touted, and just how it all sort of shakes out in the end. And just to see our individual tastes, through all the movies that come out throughout the year, especially this summer, it's been a really fun mixed bag, I would say, for most people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, dude, without a doubt. And Just to comment on those last three Radio Silence movies real quick, I do think
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that they set up that were supposed to be surprises just ended up getting spoiled by the marketing in so many different ways. Like I remember watching Scream 5 and they set up like Stu's house to be this big reveal. And it's like, why? Like we knew about that like when they wrapped filming, like from
Yeah.
set photos. Like what
Yeah.
are you talking about? Robert, I'm so sorry, man. Oh my God, stay away from social media, dear Lord.
Well, they knew that you were listening to us talking about it, so the algorithm was like, "Oh, Robert wants to know about the cameo."
No. Oh
Fucking
man, that's
computers.
brutal. Fucking computers, man. Google, damn it. Yeah, no, but it's so funny. I think an element from all three of their last couple of films got spoiled by the trailers just because, all of those movies are, they were trying to market them as like a little, they're like more blockbuster horror and all that. But again, it goes back to that to the marketing conversation we were having. They just want to put everything in the trailers to beg people to come to their movie. They're not like trying to create that atmosphere. They're not saying like you're gonna miss out if you're not seeing this. It's more so a begging act with a lot of the way that they marketed all three of those movies. It was a little too much. I think that Dermot Mulroney pretty much spoiled that he was the killer in Scream 6 before it even came out in a certain interview. So there was a lot of things that just from the marketing like kind of ruined some of the bigger surprises of all three of those movies. Like Abigail, they present it as a big twist when she's when she's confirmed to be a vampire, and it's just like why would they do it that way? But I think that's the marketing people's faults, not so much the directors, if that
Sure.
makes sense. So I don't know. That's my one defense that I guess
Yeah.
I'll throw up about that.
And clearly the directors don't get, they don't have final cut on a trailer. Like, I'm not under that guise as well, but I know that maybe some people think, oh, well, the director would like be able to sit in and have a say. And it's like, no, probably not, unfortunately. I would, Abigail, the parts that I really loved reminded me of House on a Haunted Hill, 1999. Having that ragtag group stuck in a house together reminded me a lot of that film.
Yeah.
I loved a lot of the gore moments reminded me of like From Dusk Till Dawn and Evil Dead, like these like blood explosions and really fun stuff. I don't know what it is. I guess with Radio Silence, they just never stick the landing for me. But at the same time, I do have to say this is like, I'm happy that they're successful, and my opinion like has no bearing on whether those guys are going to get another job, because their movies make money, and so it's great for the genre. It's like I love seeing successful people or seeing artistic creative people be successful regardless of whether or not like I'm gung-ho about what they're doing, because I think that really is important, and it elevates the whole thing. Like the rising tide raises all ships, so it brings other people into the fray. And I would rather have more horror than not, and then we all get something we like. I think 2024 has been a banger year for horror, not just because the movies have been really good, but because, man, think about it. Think about the variety of horror we've gotten this year. It's been such an awesome mix. We're not even done yet. Like, we're getting Terrifier 3, we're getting Nosferatu, we're getting It's Me, Billy Chapter 2. Like, so we're not even finished. And there's a flavor for everyone. The buffet is full. Line up and eat as much as you want.
It's definitely been one of the most diverse years, without a doubt. I mean, like, even some of the movies I wasn't crazy about, I can totally see other people being, like, in love with them. The First Omen is one, like, that personally just didn't work for me, but I know that some people are, like, over the moon about it. They're, like, top 10 of the year, like, maybe favorite horror of the year from some folks. That's awesome, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing, like, I don't know, I think so many people are, like, just so set in their ways to the point where they're like, well, this sucked, so if it didn't work for me, it worked for nobody. What's up, fellas?
Yeah.
That's not how I think. I don't know. I totally see why that would have worked for some people, especially fans of like Possession or like some of those weirder, older, crazier horror movies that are that chaotic. I can totally see people digging that one, for those reasons. And same with Longlegs. Like if you're a huge fan of Silence of the Lambs, just a huge fan of Nick Cage in general, oh my God, you're gonna love that movie. Like it's so much fun. So I love that. I really do love that. 2024 especially has something for everybody in this realm of horror.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it is one of those things where, maybe sometimes we can get a little excitable about our feelings. But again, it's like to be able to articulate it, to be able to explain why you don't like something. I think that's the most important thing. Like, to say like something's shit is like, that's, you know, like
That's not fair.
I think, yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like, sure, we should all have like the opinions that we have, but let's respect like not only the art form, but let's respect each other enough to be able to articulate it the best way we can, and not just like take, to me, sort of like saying something's the best or the worst is sort of like a chicken shit way out. You know, it's like,
Right,
and
right.
everyone, it seems like everything becomes more divisive, and things become like things that shouldn't be political sort of feel like they're that way anyway. It's just, it's totally bizarre. And you know, you brought up the first Omen, and I've always been one of those people where like religious possession movies, I don't know what it is. I don't think they're bad. I'm just not as interested in them as I am in just like random demonic possession films like The Evil Dead. And
Yeah.
you know, we had an Evil Dead film in 2023. We had Rise by Lee Cronin, which certainly had some elements that I really, really enjoyed. I felt like it sort of walked up to the edge without really diving off the cliff. And I kind of wanted it to see it dive off the cliff, because one thing I've learned about being an Evil Dead fan for, you know, a really long time at this point is that each film seems to sort of take it a little bit further. And I really wanted Rise to take it a little bit further, and I felt like they got to that point and sort of pulled back, especially compared to the 2013 Fede Alvarez film. And everyone's talking about Fede these days. I mean, he seems to understand IPs like no one else. But, you know, we're getting 2 new Evil Dead films that are in pre-production right now. The other day on your stream, I had mentioned like I want to see this like North African like colonial era, like 1700s, late 1600s. Like, it would be really cool just to see the Book of the Dead in a different part of the world at a different time. And you had mentioned a Western Evil Dead, which I think is an awesome idea. Let's talk some Evil Dead. What do you say?
This is the franchise I would love to make a movie in. Like, I just think there's so much potential for Evil Dead, man. And you know, like we're talking about, there's so much potential to do period pieces here. There's potential to do, you know, just future continuations, bring back past characters, maybe even. There's so much you can do. Like, I'm honestly here for 2 more Evil Dead movies, because I feel like you can do 2 more. You can do 4 more Evil Dead movies. Like, this is an idea that the last 2 movies especially approved, that you can really apply it to any situation and it turns it into just pure horror. I was, you know, Rise is definitely a bit of a step down from 2013 Evil Dead. I do agree. I still really enjoyed it though, and especially just for the concept alone. Like, you're dealing with such different characters than the rest of this franchise, and yet it still in a lot of ways works. It might not be the, you know, the best way to set up the Necronomicon, right? Like, we find it in like an earthquake happens and this guy jumps in there. Like, what? I don't know about that, but it's a crazy way to get there for sure. But I still just think this situation of, you know, you're in this high-rise apartment and we're doing the Necronomicon. We're out of the cabin now. That's wild. Yeah. But we can also do this in medieval medieval times. I love that. I love that about this franchise. I've always thought that a Western Evil Dead though would be sweet. That's personally what I would want to do if I ever get. I love old school spaghetti westerns too. I don't know if I don't think I've ever brought that up like on YouTube. I'm gonna be honest. No one wants to talk about that, right? But
that's gonna be the next live stream. It's gonna be the next live stream is Jake talking about spaghetti westerns, Ennio Morricone soundtracks.
Well, they're so dramatic, and they lend themselves to these like kind of stories that I really like to see in horror too. You know what I mean? These are lawless like time periods here that you can play around with. So that's got to be an element of it, right? And to apply that now to Evil Dead, isolation and lawlessness, which are 2 very scary elements put together. Like I feel like there should be more Western horror. You know what I mean? Like, why is there not? It just lends itself to that concept. Sounds like a terrifying time period. So I don't know. I would love to see just the Book of the Dead pop up in some like dusty Western town where there's just no escape. It has like the Thing feel, but like opposed to Antarctica, it's just like this middle of nowhere desert town. You know, I feel like you could do something very similar to that there.
Yeah, there was a couple months ago or something. I was like, man, I want to do an Evil Dead film. I said that pretty much the same thing. I was like, I want a Western. and I want it to be like, because Sam Raimi did The Quick and the Dead with like Sharon Stone and Leo and Gene Hackman. I was like, The Quick and the Evil Dead.
There
And
you
it just
go.
takes place over one night in this tiny little dusty town, right? And you just see like 12 hours of this, example of the Evil Dead, of a deadite coming in. And my buddy Vincent DeSanti was like, hey, can I direct? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, let's work on that together. Because I think that is a really fun idea. It's a really cool concept. And the Evil Dead really, the best thing about the Evil Dead is the same guys that created the original films. They're still the rights holders. They understand that film is something that evolves. They're willing to give, they see things in younger filmmakers and they want to give them chances. And they know who to pick, right? It's sort of like, I don't know if you're a sports guy, but it's like a GM in a draft, like picking the right, like, oh, I need a good quarterback. Like I need to what are the things that I see that I know can be success for my franchise for the next 10 years? And I think that like Sam Raimi, Rob Tappert, and Bruce Campbell are really good at picking those people, really good at being involved, but also picking people that they know they can take their hands off of and just let them work, And it's one of those things. I think the best thing that Evil Dead Rise did is there's that line on the record about there being 3 volumes of the book. That's the best thing because it built this whole thing into the lore where now Ash, Mia, and everybody from Evil Dead Rise all exist in the same universe. And now, if you want to tell stories from different parts of the world and different times, all you need is one of those books to exist. So we could see, they're putting 2 together right now. We could see simultaneous. I mean, it's an anthology series pretty much, other than the first 3 films, really. So it is interesting to think about all the places they could take it. I was even thinking like one of them on one of Columbus's ships. I want to see a movie where the Book of the Dead is on the Santa Maria, the Pinta, or the Nina. And then you could do a follow-up where there's a Native American Evil Dead story. Like maybe there's a couple tribes that are, there's been conflicts all throughout human history. So maybe you just like play in that, sandbox of putting the Book of the Dead in one of those. Maybe one group is using it as a weapon against the other. And, I don't know. It just seems like we could have tons of these movies. This is one of those, franchises that I'll take all you got. I don't know.
And you were talking about how this is just one of the most consistent franchises in horror.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. There is, out of all 5 of these movies, there is something for every horror fan out there. I mean, there is the body horror of Fede's movie. You get a little bit of that in the Lee Cronin film, but again, it is maybe a little more like studio feeling. Then you have like the indie roots. You know what I mean? There's a slapstick element to Evil Dead 2, and then there's a full-blown comedy film right in the middle, which is crazy. There's truly no other just franchise alone that's like this. Like there's so many different characters and fun moments that you can pull. It's also just one of the most chaotic franchises ever. I mean, who's the main character of the Evil Dead franchise? It's really the Book of the Dead. That's really the only through line, which is crazy to me. I mean, even Ash's story in between 1, 2, and Darkness is changed every single time, to accommodate the new story they're trying to tell. But in a way, I kind of love that because it allows every single movie out of all 5 of those to just let it be their own damn thing.
Yeah. The first 3 movies are all different genres, which is great. Like you get, it's almost like a total spectrum within the first 3. You get your horror, you get your in-between horror and comedy, and then you get your comedy, and it's like, it all sort of makes sense in a way. It's like this natural progression. It all feels like it's cohesive and everything. And they've been able to always bring that element. Even the Ash versus Evil Dead show had a little bit of that Evil Dead 2 feel. It maybe leaned a little more into the gore. Like my favorite is the original, and my second favorite is the Fede Alvarez reboot.
Hell yeah.
Because I just like the serious side, I guess. Like I want all the blood and all the discomfort and everything. And maybe that's why I was a little let down with Rise. But I do think they did a great job. It's all about what they, working with what you got, and Evil Dead Rise is no slouch. There's not a bad movie in the whole franchise, and that's a difficult thing to say when it comes to horror.
Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you, man. My 2 favorites are the original and the 2013 film. I think there's some of my favorite Those two in particular, if I have like a top 10 list of favorite horror movies of all time, those are both on that list. I do really appreciate 2, Army of Darkness and Rise, though, man. I mean, they're really fun movies. I mean, I think one of the best, horror comedies of all time is Army of Darkness. Oh my God. I could put that on any time and have a great time with it, but it is a totally different vibe than the other movies. I mean, we have like animated skeletons running around attacking Ash. That's so ridiculous. What? That's the same franchise? I can't name another franchise that that has so many different elements and things you can love about it. I don't know. There's really no other franchise like Evil Dead. It's just so special.
Yeah, and even like you see how it influenced other films. Like when I watch something like Dead Alive, I'm like, well, damn. Like that like you can tell. And then reading that Peter Jackson, like when he put together Bad Taste, it was, the original Evil Dead was the inspiration for just like, hey, if you have to film a movie on your weekends and it takes like 1.5 years or 2 years to make it, then so be it. Like live your dream. And then that's what he did with Bad Taste, which is, very experimental and odd and everything. But for his next movie to be something as great as Dead Alive, which to me is still one of my favorite zombie movies of all time and one of my favorite horror comedies. Like I have a total blast watching that movie. I just think like this wouldn't exist without the Evil Dead. I mean, you could go even further. You could say that like, horror comedy in general might not have existed without Evil Dead. Like, would we have gotten Return of the Living Dead, Shaun of the Dead, and all that kind of stuff if it weren't for these two things sort of coming together so perfectly?
Oh yeah. Oh man, Return of the Living Dead. Oh, God, that's another franchise that I would love. I know there's been talk of a new movie in that franchise, but there's something about those first two that I just think is so special. Like that's another horror comedy that works so well for me because it's very much so rooted in horror, but it has these hilarious moments as well.
Yeah,
it's so funny. I mean, send more paramedics and shit. That's great. But then it's also kind of terrifying a little bit too. You have this sequence where they capture one of the zombies and they're talking to it, and she's talking about, she's like, "Oh, I'm in so much pain because I'm dead, and the only thing that like I'm totally paraphrasing, but the only thing that alleviates that is like eating brains." And it's ridiculous. But there's also kind of a dark side to that. It's like, think about that situation. It's like, it almost makes you sympathetic for zombies. Before that, I can't think of another movie that makes me feel that way. It's really interesting. I don't know. It's a thought-provoking, hilarious, and disgusting film all the way around. I love it. I don't know. Return of the Living Dead, that's a really special flick.
Well, and it's really cool too that it came from the same that the writer of that film wrote Night of the Living Dead with George Romero. So they both sort of, Romero went in his serious route, and then you've got I always forget the other writer's name. I don't know why I forget it. Probably because it's not George Romero. But he went and sort of created his own little world, and it's like it's pretty cool that we see the films are sort of connected in a way. I mean, clearly they're making reference to Night of the Living Dead in the first film. And man, the performances are great. I mean, Clu Gulager, I'll take all the Clu Gulager you got. I just love him so much. And of course, Tom Matthews, Miguel Nunez Jr. Love me some Miguel Nunez Jr. And I'm not going to complain too much about Linnea Quigley. I won't complain too much. Yeah, man, Evil Dead, that's one of those things I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. I really like that they're picking like up and coming budding filmmakers. They're not relying on, nowadays when everyone brings up a franchise, it's like, have Mike Flanagan do it. Like he'll just do everything. Like Robert Eggers, and like all these guys are great, but also they're sort of like, they're sort of doing their thing because they've already proven themselves. So it's almost like, well, who's next? Those guys are already the starters on the field. Like who's on the bench that's been like putting in the reps and looks like they've got what it takes. And I think that that's one of the things that the production team on Evil Dead, they've got an eye for that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where they go there.
Have you seen the films from those guys that got selected to do the next two Evil Deads?
I still need to see. Infested is one of them, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I still need to see that one. I've not yet seen it.
I think, I watched that film because I was so curious. I'm like, what is this all about? Is this guy, ready to take on such a big franchise? it's got the tension. It might not be, it's not a perfect film by any means, but dear God, I mean, it is, it's terrifying. Like, he's definitely going to have that scary element that I think the original and especially Fede's movie has done so well. He's going to capture that for sure. I don't know so much about the gore yet. I'm not 100% on his take on that, but oh my God, the tension building in that movie is so well done. Like, I see what Sam Raimi sees in him.
Yeah, and hopefully they just step in and they're like, hey, this is what we're doing with the gore. Like, you figure out everything else. I think one thing that like Fede did really well, and you sort of touched on it as far as like finding the Book of the Dead in Rise, that it didn't really track like storytelling wise. I think one of the great things that Fede did in the 2013, I mean, first of all, it looks modern, but there's no talk of cell phones. That's great. I love when you don't have cell phones in a horror movie, because it just helps you sort of dive in and forget. I do think it's brilliant that they had Mia, recovering. So there's a reason why they're in isolation, to help their friend. And is it Eric that opens up the book? He's a teacher. He's like he kind of feel like he's one of those guys that's like, oh, the religious stuff is just like folklore and all that. And he's this inquisitive intellectual. So he's curious and he's going to dive in. There's a reason why he rips the plastic off and takes the barbed wire off, and like he's willing to take that dive because he legitimately is like, I just don't really believe in this kind of stuff. So I do think the motivation's set up really well in something like what Fede did, and hopefully moving forward they kind of keep that going where it feels a little more, it just resonates a little bit smoother for folks.
No, I totally agree. I want to see that. I kind of want to see that come back. I do really like how experimental Evil Dead Rise is, but yeah, again, it does lead to some questionable motivations, right? There is some weirdness of just simply getting the Book of the Dead up a few floors. I love this take as well, Damien Rugna. Yep. He was excellent. When Evil Lurks is such an underrated foreign film that not enough people are talking about, I don't think.
Yeah, I think When Evil Lurks, like when I try to describe it to people that are in the horror crowd, I'm like, imagine if Christopher Nolan did an Evil Dead film, because it feels like it's in the real world. They're trying to connect it with something real, but it is horrific. I felt like one of the best things that they did in that movie is like the shot blocking, where you put the camera in a spot to where without using an effect, you're able to reveal something shocking just by the movement of a camera or the movement of an actor, which I thought was just so creative, and you just don't see it enough. You see jump scares and stuff, but this is like just a little more artistic, maybe something a little bit more for somebody that has like a little more refined taste. I don't know, but yeah, When Evil Lurks, holy shit. Like some of the best acting I've ever seen in a film as well. Like it felt real. I guess that's all I'll say about the acting there. Yeah, if you guys haven't seen When Evil Lurks, man, I can't wait to see what he does next, because this guy is something else. I know he wants to do Friday the 13th, because I saw him on he was on Flet's Movies and Pop Culture 13, and every time it got brought up of what do you want to make, he's like, Friday the 13th is my favorite, and I would love to make a Friday the 13th film. And
oh, hell yeah.
So that might be a fun kind of switcheroo, like let's not keep him, let's not typecast him as a director just because When Evil Lurks has those vibes. It might be kind of fun to see him do something like that. Whereas I would love to see somebody like Damien Leone do Evil Dead instead of another slasher. I would like to see him take that love of gore and bring it to the Evil Dead, which is, to me, the celebration of gore.
Oh my God, there's so much I can jump off right there. Yeah, Damien Leone, I do want to see what else he's got up his sleeve. I think he's a great director when it comes to Terrifier, but I don't know what else. Erica, thanks for hanging out with us. Really appreciate you. I don't know what else he's got going on. What else has he got up his sleeve? We hear that he's working on this project with Sam Raimi, interestingly enough, at Ghost House Pictures. So it's some kind of original concept from him, something new. And I really do hope it is something other than a slasher. I would love to see him tackle Friday the 13th. He's put that word out there a few times now. But man, I would love to see him do something like The Evil Dead. Or I've actually suggested recently, it would be so cool to see him do a VHS segment. I don't know if you're a big fan of that franchise, but yeah, just found footage. It's like, whoa, like what would he do with that? You know what I mean? What would that end up becoming? I would be very interested to see.
Yeah, at this point, it would just be, it would be great to see. Like, I love, watching people stretch, seeing what they can take on next. Like, we know what you're comfortable with. How are you going to grow as an artist? I'm always interested in seeing artists grow and seeing them be able to like take their talents and maybe just push it in a little bit of a different direction and see how they respond. I mean, clearly he's amazing at practical effects. Now, it might be kind of fun to see him do something that's a little more subdued that still has great practical effects. I mean, the guy's got skill. He doesn't need to just do like the wild, outlandish Terrifier stuff. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think he's got the chops for sure. I am interested in if he did a Friday the 13th, like, would he like kind of, bring it back a little bit, or would he just sort of go full bore? It is interesting because it's never really been the Friday the 13th thing to be overly gory. But I guess I wouldn't be opposed to it.
There's a lot less tricks up his sleeve with Jason than there is with Art. You know what I mean? Art the Clown, he doesn't even have to be killing anybody to be so entertaining. You know what I mean? David Howard Thornton's doing a lot of the work there. So with Jason, who's this just, faceless, I'm just gonna walk up to somebody and kill them. That's the extent of it. How do you make that fresh? How do you make that your own thing, your own interpretation? What would Damien add to that? I almost feel like, I've heard some people say like, oh, he should do the next Nightmare on Elm Street. I know exactly what to expect if Damien Leone were attached to a new Nightmare on Elm Street film. It would be Terrifier 2 again. It would be exactly that, because you're dealing, Art the Clown is just silent Freddy Krueger. That's all it is. I love it. But it is just he's Freddy Krueger and you can't talk. That's it. If Damien were to do that franchise, I know exactly where it's going. Friday the 13th is a different animal, though. What does that become? How do you make that interesting with the tools that he has? It's definitely a gorier film. I totally agree there. But does he try to take on a new element to Jason? Does he try to reinvent the character? That's what I would be really interested in seeing the most from that.
Yeah, I guess maybe you just show. Yeah, if they can set the lore right, maybe you got a younger Jason in there, somebody a little bit more virile. I don't know. That is a tough one. And I mean, if he did Nightmare, he'd probably just bring in David Howard Thornton to play Freddy, which probably wouldn't be the worst thing ever, right?
I don't know how that.
Yeah, I don't know how old David Howard Thornton is, but I would imagine he could do a good run.
Oh yeah.
I keep on talking about this actor Jared Bankins, who was in the Twisted Metal TV show. And when I watched that show, he is Thomas Hayden Church's like main lackey in the first. Have you seen that show?
A little bit of it. I didn't finish it.
So he's in the first few episodes. His character doesn't make it all the way through the first season. Spoiler alert. But man, the way that he just like takes joy out of the torture that he puts there's a brother and sister character in the first few episodes of that show. And his character is just like, he's sort of like hunting them down and just like putting them through it. And I was like, man, this guy is like, he's got the joy that Freddy has in torturing people. Then I like looked him up. I'm like, oh, he's 36. Oh, well, shit. Robert Englund was 36 when they started production of Nightmare on Elm Street. And then I started thinking he's not like a household name. I think that's really important for somebody like Freddy. Like, you don't like, Robert became a star because of Freddy. He was in V before Freddy. That was like the only thing really that he had under his belt. Like, I love V, but I love even more that he became a star because of the character that he played. So I also think when people say Bill Skarsgård, to me, that's the Mike Flanagan of horror casting. It's just the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. Like, nothing against Bill Skarsgård. He's great, but it's like, guys, there are awesome entertainers out there and great performers out there that could really help you suspend that disbelief and give them a shot at some greatness as well. And I think like one of the biggest missteps the 2010 Nightmare had is that they cast, an Academy Award winning actor as Freddy. And it just like, there's a whole bunch of problems with that movie, obviously. Like, I don't think Freddy's scary at all, which is bizarre because it seems like they're really trying to make him scary. I just wasn't feeling it. But I think that maybe going with somebody that's like, late 30s that can do it for a good 10, 15 years. 5 movies if you write them well. I don't know.
Well, why does that first Nightmare work so well? It's because, you know, you have Robert Englund, who's such a hungry actor right there. He's trying to prove himself. You know, you can kind of feel him dip a little bit as the movies go on. But man, that first movie, he is giving it his all, dude. He is so excited when he's cutting off his fingers and stuff. He's losing his mind. It's awesome. I mean, dude, Freddy Krueger jumping through a door, like the glass door or whatever, that's ridiculous. That's what we need from a new Freddy performance. Is we need that energy, we need that excitement of bringing this character back to life. You can't just put anybody in that role. That's why people are so protective of it. That's why people are saying that only Robert can play it. I've suggested a few people. I think that honestly, I think your choice is maybe even the best. But I've suggested. I'm a huge Always Sunny in Philadelphia fan. I just love it.
Me too. I love it. Well, you're the Rat King, so you know all about it.
Exactly. Tell me that Glenn Howerton wouldn't do a good Freddy Krueger. And I say this because, I mean, Dennis Reynolds is a fucking sociopath.
Psycho. Yeah. he's the most nuts out of all of them. They're all bad people, but he's the worst.
yeah. And I think if you twist that character a little bit and make it more excitable, like maybe even more, you know, just a little more excited about killing, more like ready to admit it, like how Freddy Krueger is. That character is Freddy Krueger. Just put the makeup on him and he's ready to go. I would love to see that. He might not be, you know, young enough, but man, I would, I don't know. I think that would be crazy. That would really work for me.
Yeah, those guys, it's funny. They've been going on so long. We still think of them because I rewatch shows. So you always think of them as like early 20s, but it's like, no, they're like 50 now. Like all these guys are like 50 in this show. But I do think Glenn is a really, really powerful actor. Like, I think he's probably got the best chops out of the people on that show for sure, as far as range goes. And absolutely, you're right. Like, you know, Dennis might be the Scranton Strangler from The Office, like, as far as we know. They're, you know, because they talk about Coginos in both shows. There is a concept that maybe that's the next great horror movie, is finally blending The Office with It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and have Dennis be a straight up killer. I love that episode where they're going to pretend like he and Dee are going to pretend like they're going to kill the waitress. And Dennis sort of gets confused. Like, he thinks they really are. And then he's like, oh, sorry. I just sort of got confused. Like, he was actually excited to like commit the act. And of course, there's the implication.
Oh my God, dude, that clip's ridiculous. I mean, it's hard to watch. Like, it's almost like, are you serious right now? That's crazy, man. He is I don't know. He's just so crazy on that show. So it feels effortless, you know. I could totally see him taking on just some kind of slasher role at some point in his career. Would love to see that.
Yeah. Hey, he should be in the new Scream. Nothing wrong with 50, Jamie. It just might be too old to start playing Freddy Krueger. That's my only thing. Just too old to start, you know.
Have you heard that new real quick? I know we're going on 2 hours now, but have you heard that new quote from Heather Langenkamp about how Robert Englund like might be down to play the character again? Might have had a change of heart.
I did see that, and all I can think of is like, please let it be for Dylan's New Nightmare 2.
Hell yeah!
Because I know that Cecil's working on something that brings like everything together. Like like he's working on a couple scripts just depending on what happens, but he wants to bring in Heather and Robert. Like, he wants to make let's make it what does Randy say in Scream? Make this shit's legit, something like that.
Yeah.
And no better way for Robert to do it than to jump back into the meta world, because then the age thing, you don't have to de-age, you can play it straight. What do you think?
I think that would rock. That would be a really interesting way just get some energy back in this franchise. There's so much there's so many people who are just hyped up about Friday the 13th. I think because of Womp Stomp. It would be cool to get a little bit of juice in the Freddy caboose. That was supposed to sound grosser than it did, and I fucked it up.
No, it sounds gross and hot at the same time, which is my favorite. So thank you.
That's the best mix, man. That's
juice in the caboose. Oh, you young whippersnappers and your damn phrases. I'm gonna write that one down. Juice in the caboose.
Dear God.
The juice is loose, babe.
Oh my God, I'm excited for that one too.
I'm literally writing it down.
There you go.
So let's bring it even more around. I've seen a couple times here. Let's see here. Noah has mentioned Scream 7. What about Scream 7 taking like a meta thing and being, you know, everyone talks about wanting to bring Stu back. Well, what if you just get to bring Matthew back, and Matthew's Matthew, and you have a killer that's like, let's just ultra meta it up, and a ghost face that's tired of these damn movies being made and is just gonna start killing the performers.
You know, man, I mean, that sounds better than whatever they're probably gonna do. I just want, like, I want to bring the meta back to Scream. I think if there's really anything I could change about 5 and 6, it's just I think they felt a little too by the books in terms of like what the killers have to be here and there. And I want to get back to these like wild swings. Like, I think Mickey from part 2 is such a swing. Like, it's such a like, what do you mean he's trying to do that? Like, that's wild to me. I want to get back to that. I wish we could get a killer who's just like doing this like ridiculous fuck shit for like the most ridiculous reason. I don't want to see another Prescott family member pop up and be like, I'm Ghostface.
Sure.
I'm your second cousin that you haven't thought about in like 30 years. I don't care. Like, I don't care, man. If that's where they end up going with it, my interest in Scream has all but died. So I just hope that we get a killer that, yeah, I mean, dude, something like that would rock. Like, just like, these movies have got to stop, you know? Like, that's Scream, you know?
Somebody that's like some Twitter warrior, because I mean, man, the Twitter Scream is like about as toxic as it gets. Like, when people are like, if Melissa Barrera isn't in every movie, I'm mad at that movie all of a sudden. And it's like, whoa. Like, she just can't be in every movie. Like, we all love Melissa Barrera, okay? But, it's like, let's take a step back. These are just movies. But, basically where I'm at is I want to see that ultra meta Scream, or I want to see a two-parter where we don't know who the killer is at the end of Scream 7, because what would create better marketing and better content creation, which again, we pretty much established during our chat here, Jake, that the production companies, whether or not they're going to admit it, they sort of rely on the fans and rely on content creators to sort of push their news. Man, can you imagine Scream 7 and 8, and Scream 7 ends on a cliffhanger, and just all the publicity and all the hype of like, who is it? Trying to figure out the clues, people putting together videos, people basically doing the advertising for Spyglass for Scream 8. And then you would have like, just do a little two-parter. You can sort of cap the series at that point, and have a grand finale. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at right now. One of those two ideas.
I remember when Scream 5 and 6 were, all this hype were it was building for these movies. People were like so hyped up. I just remember all these all these horror channels popped up in the early 2020s. I'm mine is one of them, and it was all because of like how hyped up people were about these movies. There was thousands of theories coming from like all over the place about like what was going to happen, what's going to happen in this reinvention, and to do something like that is just like the next step. You know what I mean? Like, that's not only does it reinvent and refresh this franchise that needs it maybe more than any horror franchise that's still long running. Oh my God. But again, it lends itself to that creativity, that hype building in your mind. I think the reason that people were so excited about these movies was because of a lot of that content creation, coming from myself and many other horror content creators out there, just pitching these wild theories. Like, it really made you feel like anything could happen in these new movies. I want to get back to that. I feel like Scream is almost a little expected now after 5 and 6. 5, I felt like there were some explosions which were really fun, but 6 pulled its punches a bit. And if we can get that back in 7, which I don't know if we're on track to do that or not, I would love to get this franchise back to, I have no idea what the fuck they're gonna do next. If we can get back to that, Scream is alive again.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting, because I think one of the reasons, other than getting paid well enough, obviously that brought Nev back, but I really do think, like, I would not be surprised, when the news came out of her coming back and then Kevin Williamson coming in, I was like, I would put like my left nut, I would bet that she went in and said, I want Kevin to direct this movie. It's not just about the money. Like, I need this, and then you're bringing Kevin in. Because I'm not doing this with a stranger. Like, we're bringing in somebody that I know, and then later on she talked like that they had, in the 90s, they had talked about doing a Scream movie together and how much fun it would be if Kevin got to direct. And I think Teaching Mrs. Tingle was like the last movie he ever directed, and so it's been a while for him. But man, if there's any franchise that's tailor-made for him, it's Scream. And really, with a good crew around him, he can't really mess it up. If you rely on your crew, you talk to your director of photography, all that kind of stuff, the movie's going to look great, all that. So really, it's about him coming in, taking a fresh look at the story, doing his rewrites if he has to, and being able to communicate with the actors. So, I'm hopeful for Scream 7. I know a lot of people, I mean, even, let's see here, even Raymond says, no more Scream for me unless Melissa and Jenna come back. But, her character, like, that's Sam's arc is all done at the end of Scream 6. A lot of people, I know there's still some confusion about what happened with her and Spyglass, but really she was only contracted for 2 films. So she was never fired. She was just never given a new contract to come back for more films. So they knew full and well when they did part 6 that this could be the end. Maybe we could bring her back, but let's write it in a way where she's got some sort of closure. So, don't worry. She's going to come back in like 10 or 15 years because the legacy sequels will never die because Halloween 2018 made $1 gazillion.
I think it's really funny. We do have some people talking about, they're like, oh, Scream 7's going to be the last one. They're going to close it out. And I'm like, no, they're not. Oh my God, there's going to be 12 of these things, dude. They're never going to stop making Scream. It's got the name, you know what I mean? When it's a very, very popular horror IP, especially. This is just going to keep a money train rolling for a very long time, I think.
Yeah, they'll probably, they'll either close it out or in 7 or 8, and then you can always reboot it.
And
I think
they
that's
will.
Yeah, I mean, and Scream 5 was sort of a reboot, like you were talking about. Scream 5 just had a fresh, new sort of vibe for a different generation. I even think, I love Scream 4. I'm a big Scream 4 apologist. It's my second favorite in the franchise. I think what Wes did with that is actually pretty remarkable because he stepped in years after the 3rd film and was like, you know what? Like, he looked around the landscape and he's like, I'm an old cat. I've been doing this for a long time. But I'm going to make a movie that's modern. I'm not going to give them like this is the way we used to make horror movies. Like, no, like you get blood and guts all over the place in Scream 4. And I think it's really cool that it's still Wes Craven that did that, whereas I think in 5 and 6, some of the kills, I don't know, like 5 and 6, like, I don't think they're bad, but it's just like, they're not good. I'm in this weird spot with 5 and 6. And I also predicted the killers in Scream 5, which I had never been able to do. But within the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, shit. This is somewhat obvious here.
I'm so with you on 4, though. Like, I think 4 is without a doubt the best sequel. I really do enjoy all 6 of them personally. Like, I have a very fun time with all of them across the board. But man, 4, there's something special about it. I think it might like Jill is the best killer reveal maybe in the whole franchise.
What a performance.
Man.
Emma Roberts, I've said this before on the channel, she could have just done whatever. Like, her aunt is Julia Roberts, her dad is Eric Roberts. She could have had a career doing whatever she wanted. Clearly, she's a horror fan because it's not just Scream that she's done. She's been in a whole bunch of horror properties, but man, she commits to that role. And like, it's kind of what I was saying about like Pattinson, and even like seeing Melissa Barrera become like, better and better as an actress. When you see somebody like Emma Roberts that could have just been in like Disney movies forever, but you see her like, throwing herself into the table and running into the wall, you're just like, all right, like, this is great. This is exactly what I want from this kind of character here.
It worked so well for me. I again, 5 and 6 are fun. I think they have their moments. Really the only good like killer reveal though, I think, is Amber's in 5. Like, that's the only one that I'm like, okay, that was fucking crazy. The rest of these, I don't know, man. That was cool. I think the way that they did it was like really inventive and different with just the gun, it's just like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. But the rest, I don't know, the rest of them. Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, that was like, that blew my mind. Richie, I saw coming from a mile away. I was just like, dude, yeah, of course you're fucking Jack Quaid. Of course you're the killer, bro. What? Yeah. But yeah, those movies, I still have fun with them. I really do like the characters. I know some people don't, and that's totally fine. But I still have a good time with them. I think there's no bad Scream yet. Let's hope it. I hope it stays that way, but we'll see. We'll see what's up.
And I think the first 2/3 of part 6 was like, I was totally on board. Like, I thought the first 2/3 of 6 was better than part 5, and man, they really once the killer reveal happened, all I could think about was how I felt like they pulled the rug out from under us, and I was like kind of pissed off. So now I'm not even thinking about your movie. Probably the way a lot of people feel about Halloween Ends, where it's like, well, now I'm not even thinking about the art. I'm just thinking about like, well, this is like so dumb right now, and maybe I'm just ready for a killer to do the reveal and not start acting like a cartoon character. Because it seems like all of them do that. I mean, and except for the first, honestly, except for the first movie, they all kind of act like cartoon characters to a degree. But I do love what you said about Mickey, because I think my favorite line in the franchise is "surprise cameo just for you." Like the most like stoner surfer voice I've ever heard in my life. Like I know that I sound like the turtle from fucking Finding Nemo, but goddamn, when Timothy Oliphant says that line, I'm like, dude, you sound like you're rivaling Keanu Reeves as far as like that kind of voice, you know?
Whoa.
See, he's very over the top, but it weirdly works for me. I don't know. There's something about like Mickey in part two. But you know, Billy's mother and all that. It all
Billy's mother.
I eat it up, man. Like his motive is fucking crazy. Yeah. He wants to get caught. Like it's just like, let's go, dude. Yeah. Mickey's one of the most underrated killers in all of Scream. I just love him to death.
Bob Dole on the witness stand in my defense. Like, yeah. And it's perfect for the time that it came out, because that's exactly the way things were politically, because things were sort of flip-flopped in the late 90s, where it was like the conservatives that were more like, oh, we need to like censor this and censor that. We need parental advisory stickers. Like we need, like, people can't be saying these things or doing these things. We're sort of in a little bit of like a cultural kind of thing right now where, you know, maybe it doesn't hit the same way. But when I saw that in theaters in, what was it, 97? So I was 15 when I saw that in theaters. And it was like, yeah, this totally makes sense. Like those were the Republicans were the people at that time that would be like, it's the movies that did it, not this psycho, you know?
Right, right.
And Scream 2 has a great opening. I mean, it's so tough to, the opening in the original Scream is like, you're not going to top it. But man, the opening in Scream 2 is really good. And, you know, I'm not very well versed in all of Jada Pinkett Smith's performances, but holy shit, dude, what she does in Demon Knight and then what she does in Scream 2, she's really, really good in these performances. And maybe that's just kind of like natural for her. Because I actually think she's like charmingly bitchy in Scream 2. I dig it.
Yeah.
It feels almost real.
It's almost sacrilege to say like anything's better than the original Scream opening, because it is, I mean, it's perfect for what it is. But man, my personal favorite though in the whole franchise, I think, is the opening to Scream 2. It's so well done. And it captures the whole tone of that movie so well. Like the kill at the theaters, and you see all the fans excited. Like they don't even realize what's happening. It's brilliant. It's a little bit of psychological horror. It's silly. It's fun. It's playful. There's so much about that opening. You could dissect it all day. I just think it's brilliant across the board from start to finish.
Well, and it sort of sets like something off that became a tenet for the franchise from there on out. You know, the idea of stab and the idea, like, because honestly, I think like I think in a way, and I think I might have been, you know, not victim to this, but I might have like fallen for this too. I felt like the original Scream was a little bit more like more meta than really it is. I actually think Wes Craven's New Nightmare is more meta than Scream. Absolutely. But I think the way that like we sort of think about things is like, oh, he dipped his toe in it in New Nightmare, and then in Scream he went for it. But I think Scream 2 even like it ups the ante from there, you know, as far as like really putting it kind of like in our world and making it something that like exists within our world. And these movies are now like the fake thing. Like Stab is the fake thing, not Scream. Scream is real, which I thought was pretty interesting. And yeah, I mean, the performances are great. I love the way that, you know, the way they play off each other there. I mean, maybe it doesn't make sense that a knife can go through that hard plastic as smooth as it does, but it's just movies, man. I'm cool with it. I'm cool.
No, exactly, man. I mean, it's a fun movie, and that's all it has to be at the end of the day. I want to see Scream get back to that though, because I think that opening says so much about the entire context and commentary of the film. It almost feels like an overture. You know what I mean? It is a very fun sequence, but when you look a little deeper, it is. I think it just says so much about the whole film in its entirety. So I want to get back to that. Scream 6's opening is like my favorite part of the whole movie. For what it did, I really do like the idea of seeing things from Ghostface's perspective, but it had nothing to do with the overall film. You know what I mean? I want to see something like that just take over. Like, this opening scene is so crucial to everything else that's going to go on for the rest of the flick. That kind of attention to detail is what Scream 7 needs more. I think more than anything. Can Kevin Williamson, deliver that? I really hope so. I really hope the answer is yes.
Yeah, me too. And I hope more than anything they just, make sure they get it right before they go to camera, because I think that's just one of those big things, A lot of times things get rushed and, you end up just doing whatever seems like the next logical step. But I always think I come from the world of, music and all that stuff. It's like, you write that first draft and then you go back through it and you're like, what can we do that's like just showing that we're putting some more thought into it and that we're not just going with what feels natural. And I think bringing a little bit more of that meta in there would be really nice. And I thought, when I first watched Scream 6, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be interesting. Like, we already know who Ghostface is right away. And then they just immediately cut the legs out from under that. So I was like, oh, because I think that might have been like sort of interesting to like know who one of them was, but maybe there's another one out there that we don't know about, and sort of see how that plays out. But nonetheless, I do think, Scream 6, it had its points, but man, I don't know what the hell happened at the end. I'm sort of confused.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just excited for Scream 7 to hopefully be a return to form. I think that's what we need now for Scream. We gotta pack it all back up and just do one thing really well and efficient. And then if we can do that, I think we can reinvigorate the franchise, and hopefully again just give some life to this. Scream is the franchise to break rules and break down barriers, and I don't know if we're doing that right now. We're going back to the original Final Girl. Is this gonna work? Are we gonna tell a fresh story here? I hope so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a tough thing. Like, going back to Nev and how are you going to tie it all together? You've talked about it a lot. I think Dempsey's coming back as well. I know that he sought out the role in Thanksgiving because he wanted to get back into horror, because it had been since Scream 3 when he had been in a horror film, and it's something that he really enjoys. So I'm excited to see him back as well. But yeah, it'll be Scream it's going to be a little bit of a toss up. I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and hopefully there's some real meaty news that comes out here soon.
Fingers crossed, man. I'm sick of talking about rumors.
Yeah, me too. Well, man, we've been chatting here for 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's amazing. I know it's really late where you're at, Jake. I really appreciate your time, man. You've been super sweet and gracious, not only talking about the stream on your own channel, but with your time here tonight. But I think we've sort of reached a good little spot to kind of cap things off. Before I let you go, though, and I just barely missed it by 32 minutes, but it's your mother's birthday here on the West Coast. I heard you mention that. So happy birthday, Mama Killjoy. I hope it's been a great one. I hope you guys have an awesome time hanging out here. What, you're doing a little something either tomorrow or sometime this weekend or something?
Yeah, we're gonna go out to lunch or something tomorrow at some point. Today was a crazy day at work, obviously, so we're celebrating tomorrow a little more.
Hell yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
Well, I wanted to give the birthday shout out because moms are awesome, and who would we be without our moms? I mean, for number one, we wouldn't be here, and then I'm sure some of your awesome personality traits you get from her. So, you can catch up and talk about Terrifier with her at lunch and all that kind of fun stuff, and maybe go check a matinee of Stream if she hasn't seen it yet and hasn't had that cameo spoiled. Sorry, Robert the Wolfman. But yeah, man, it's been so awesome having you on. Really looking forward to just continuing to follow you on your channel, and maybe we can put a little something together here. I feel like you and I have a good little, I don't know, I feel a little bit of a vibe going on here as far as like how we feel about certain things, and not only that, but just like the kind of way we look at things. It's really refreshing to sort of have that you know, even if every opinion doesn't line up, it's like we're kind of, you know, going for the same thing here. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time. Guys in the chat, if you're not already subbed to Killjoy Jake, you know, what are you doing? Get over there. There's a link in the description below. You can also follow his Instagram and Golgotha. Jake, it's my goal to get that channel monetized for you. Go over to Golgotha, give him a sub. You know, when you're doing dishes, when you're doing chores around the house, what better to put in your earbuds or on the speaker or on your TV than somebody playing some video games and having a damn good time? So just go over there, give our guy some love. Thank you so much, Jake. You got anything that you want to say to close out the night? I always feel bad. I sort of say goodbye and then just all you have to say is bye. So do your thing.
Dude, it's all good. I really do appreciate that, man. Thank you for the shout out there. I'm really trying to get that. Yeah, that second page monetized would be really fun. I've always wanted a gaming channel, so I can't believe I'm just finally doing it. 2 months ago was like, fuck it, let's go, let's see what happens. So I do appreciate that a bunch. Subscribe to Davey too. Jesus, he's almost monetized, fellas. So make sure to get this guy up there. 1,000 subscribers, you're not too far from it. I know you're gonna hit it, man.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you. And yeah, let's keep in touch and see what we can put together here as 2024 comes to a close. Thank you so much, Jake. Take care, man.
You too.